Hey, Andrew.
Yes, Stephen?
You know how we romanticize the days of going out to our local video store and sifting through endless amounts of movies, searching for our favorite films, and maybe even finding some hidden gems?
Oh, yes, I know it all too well. That used to be my favorite thing to do. Unfortunately, everything is online now.
Well, what if I told you that there was a place online where you could get some of them same thrills as going to the video store?
Are you talking about Orbit DVD?
I knew you knew what I was talking about. Orbit DVD is located in Asheville, North Carolina, and online with OrbitDVD.com, they bring you everything your physical media heart desires.
Yeah, they have an awesome website that stays up to date with the latest releases from all of your favorite boutique labels as well as studio releases. Not only do they carry American labels such as Criterion Collection, Severin Films, Vinegar Syndrome, and Warner Archive, but they get routine shipments on imports from companies such as 88 Films, Arrow Video, Imprint, and so much more.
And with the option to sell or trade your used copies for cash or store credit, they really bring that video store vibe to you. So go to OrbitDVD.com and stock up on your Blu-rays.
And tell them Chasing Labels sent you.
Welcome to another episode of Chasing Labels. I'm your host, Stephen Billings, and with me, as always, is your other host, Andrew Cabral. How you doing, man?
Doing good, Stephen. Doing good. We are back once again for Spy number 87. I've always liked that number. I don't know why. It just looks good next to each other, I guess.
I feel like you're going to reference I almost felt like you were going to reference an athlete, maybe, like because I know you're a
A
big sports guy.
sports reference, perhaps. I always thought 87 looked good on a sports jersey, but I guess that's
Rare. That's a rare one.
also true.
Most people go for lower numbers. I don't know why.
Well, they did just change it up to where there was only certain. This is only an American football reference, but only certain positions could only wear certain numbers or pick from a certain block of numbers. And then recently, over the last few years, they changed it to where they could pick any number they wanted, I guess.
I'm glad their priorities are,
So you'll have like linebackers wearing like number 4 or number 5, whereas those used to just be numbers that kickers and quarterbacks could wear. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And you could have, whatever other mixtures and whatnot. They changed all that up, and it screwed with people's heads. Also made people have to buy all new jerseys. I stopped buying sports jerseys years ago because I realized that with American sports specifically, there's so much turnover in terms of athletes leaving certain teams and going to other teams that buying their jerseys made them be irrelevant very quickly, and they weren't cheap to begin with.
No.
So buying $100 jersey and then that athlete leaves your team in 2 years, you're $100 in the hole, and you've got nothing. You can't wear it anymore. I mean, you can, but it just looks weird.
Well, I mean, it's a memory.
Right.
Especially if the team was good.
Especially if it was like a favorite player, I guess. You
favorite
have
player,
those memories.
My team, the Orioles for baseball, is potentially going to start being good again if the players play as well as they should. And if I go and get a jersey of one of our young and up and comers, I'm going to hope that they're going to be around for a while and that the Orioles are actually going to start winning soon. And so that even if maybe that player goes to another team in 4 years from now, I'll still look back on the memories of the good old days with that jersey.
And yeah, favorite players who have maybe now retired. I guess you can get away with that. All-time greats, you bring up the Orioles, Cal Ripken, probably an all-time.
I'm glad we're
great.
talking sports.
Yeah, I know. I don't know how we're going to
completely up at the top
of
of this episode.
But let's transition out of this, I guess, to talk about memories, talk about accomplishments, talk about things like that. We did have a guest interview for this episode.
Yes, we did. So this one was recorded a couple weeks ago, but this week we're going to have filmmaker, contributor, cinema programmer, writer, Chris O'Neill on this week. He he's coming from Ireland, and he was such a pleasure to have on. I've been a big fan of his. He does a lot of video essays. And that's kind of, I think I've said this before, but it's kind of my favorite kind of feature. I mean, commentaries are nice, interviews are nice, but there's something about a video essay that I feel like is it's very educational. It's very much, you can get the visual element, and then you get somebody who's watched the movie many times and and researched the film, and really gives you maybe hopefully an interesting way to look at the movie from their own lens, and help you think about the movie in different contexts and everything. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
video essays are kind of a more focused commentary, really, if you think about
in a
it.
way, yeah, yeah,
They're like a more pre-planned, more focused, specific, going for specific themes, specific scenes, specific moments, stuff like that. And we get into his process of how he does all that.
yeah. But also, of course, we go into his history, and talk a lot about you know why I'm jealous of cinema programmers, and that'd be, and of course we get deep into his own films, which I don't believe they're just like available anywhere. He had to share them with us, but they are all very experimental. He uses like already created footage, and like does really interesting things with them, and but we get into all that on this week's episode, Spy Number 87, here with Chris O'Neill. So, welcoming to the podcast is cinema programmer, filmmaker, and writer Chris O'Neill. How you doing, man?
Hi, and thanks for having me. This should be fun.
We appreciate you taking the time. You're just we're both kind of, it's the morning time. You're coming from over in Ireland. Is that right?
Yep. So it's a couple of hours later than you guys, but still morning time. But yeah, so it's a rare day where there's sunshine in Ireland, which doesn't
Oh,
often happen. Usually lots of rain.
oh yeah. Yeah, yeah. So y- y- you know, I've been told that um, there is a lot of rain there, and kind of similar to our Seattle scene over
Yeah.
here, and but is it still nice and green over there? It has to be nice and green when it's the better months, right?
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's one thing we do have is lots of green. The
Yeah,
skies might be grey, but we have lots of green on the ground.
that's good. That's
Nice.
good. But we appreciate you coming to talk to us today. And as usual, we we're going to get into as much as we can. Um, you're a cinema programmer, which is I think one of the coolest jobs I think there can be. And of course, you're also a person that's delved into filmmaking and some really interesting stuff. You sent us our three of your shorts, and they're all very experimental things. So, but let's start in kind of into your love of film. Like where did that whole beginnings for you start? Because we hear all different places people start with film.
Yeah, sure. I listen to your show. I've heard a few people, when they're asked the same question. Me being 41, I was very much of the video store generation, and I think what's interesting about the video store was even as a kid, you might go in to rent a kid's movie, but you're seeing walls and shelves of artwork for movies that you are curious about or might be ingrained into your mind. I mean, I was actually thinking about this earlier. Our local video store, I grew up in the UK for about 10 years before I moved to Ireland. I'm Brit Irish. And the one we used to go to most was called the Video Vault. And it had this big wall, a particular one. And I always remember seeing on it uh, Mad Max, Death Race 2000, Trancers, and Soldier Blue. And they were just random ones, and because every week we'd go in, they'd still be there, like they'd be on the shelf, and that sparked my interest. And also with the video store, you would rent a movie that to you was the same as renting the latest big release, but in fact it was incredibly obscure and nobody else knew about it. But to you, being of a young age, it's all the same. So, for example, one of my favorite movies when I was like, a kid was Buckaroo Banzai, The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai, and nobody else in school had seen it, that kind of thing. Or the Eliminators, the Empire Pictures movie. I used to love those movies, and so those trips, weekly trips to the video store, I think was a big starting point for me. And also, I must admit, my parents were very. I was very lucky with my parents that if anything was rated 15s, like sorry, in the UK, in UK and Ireland, we have like that much like the rating system in the US, but we
Yeah.
have like the 18 rating to be the highest, and 15s, age 15s, and they used to let me rent anything that was about 15s rated. Anything 18s, like sometimes I was able to watch, but with them, but anything was 15. So I saw lots of stuff, you know. Probably sometimes inappropriate, I don't know, but as I said, it was just this kind of a fascination with whatever you pick off the shelf, whether it's a big movie or a small movie. For the time period you're watching it, it's the same thing, and I think that's really where it started, you know.
Yeah, I think when you're well, first of all, I think it's what's interesting about a lot of people's early watching habits is a lot of it is based on artwork. And I think it's one of the more unappreciated things when it comes to boutique labels as well, is that we love all the really amazing artwork that gets done, but we don't think too much about who does it. And we try to bring on the show. We got a good one coming up soon with Tony Stella, but that Andrew's already spoiled, so I'll go ahead and spoil it. But he, it's we. I hear this we've heard this a few times with a few different people, that it's just looking at that row of artwork that really can be just the entryway into something that you might have never have heard of. And I think it's also really interesting as well that the video store is a curator, because it's and then at the time, there's not nearly as much output being done. The way streaming is now, where there's so much being put out, but you don't even see it. You don't even know that it's there. It just keeps filling up these streaming services. And when you go in the video store, it's all there laid out for you, and you can kind of get your eyes on anything you want and just pick. And because we're kids, or because of whatever, because the marketing machine isn't as crazy as it is now, you have so much better chance to stumble upon something interesting. And nowadays it's not so easy. I think you're always guided in some way
Mm.
towards something, and not able to just accidentally discover something.
Well, it's
Yeah,
the algorithm is what does that.
Yeah,
Computers and all that kind of
yeah,
stuff kind of takes information that you give it, or probably information you don't even know you're giving it, and it makes the decisions for you. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Whereas, just kind of it takes away all that exploration, all that, you know, finding the hidden gems or finding random things, kind of like Chris was saying, and just like you end up watching things that other people that are around you don't, have never heard of or haven't seen yet. Whereas now it feels like everyone seems to talk about the same things, well, whatever's hot at the moment. You know what I mean? Whatever's in the zeitgeist, because everybody has access to it at the exact same time, in the exact same place. So, and you can talk about it on just massive places, social media forums, and all that kind of stuff. Whereas you were saying, Chris, like back in the day, talking to your friends at school about random things, it's just not a lot of randomness now. It's all kind of like focused, and we don't even realize it.
yeah. Oh no, absolutely. And like I remember as a kid, if my parents or whatever circumstance I was with, where I was somewhere else in another town or another city or whatever, and you had time to kill, you'd find the nearest video store and just pop in, and usually rental stores, so you couldn't take anything away, but it was just the fun of going into each one and each one having different things. Obviously, the new release shelves would be probably relatively the same, but when you go to see everything else, they'd all have their own quirks and their own oddities, and because the horror section or the comedy section or the thriller section, etc., would be a random selection of library titles. They could be small and big and relatively new and older and things like that. So yeah, so I think the video store had a big influence on a lot of people in terms of their initial interest in movies. I know it certainly was for me, and as I've said, and yeah, as you were saying, now with streaming, the algorithm, and it's like, well, this is what we think you would like to see, or this is what we want you to see. Like if you actually do a search on a lot of these streaming sites of specific titles, you find sometimes you stumble across stuff by accident that you wouldn't find if you're waiting for it to be offered to you.
Yeah, it's a yeah, it's kind of a mess for me. I love just I think finding the more in-depth ways of figuring out what I like, because I mean, and I think a lot of us, especially as collectors, we do this. I think some of the best ways to find what you like is to just start with maybe filmmakers that you like, going
Mm,
going down them rabbit holes, starting with, for instance, of course, I think a lot of us loved Spielberg. So, at the time, Spielberg's got Jaws coming out, back in the 80s, your Close Encounters, your Indiana Jones. And so now you're like, well, let me, of course there was no internet then, but now you go
mm,
back and if you're, maybe reading a magazine or something, you go back and that Spielberg did Duel, he did, some interesting early work. And so it's, I think a more, you know, looking at the artists and looking at what the artists did, and the people involved, is a better way than letting the computer decide for you. And sometimes, they can give you something interesting, but it is limited. It is limited
Mhm.
to what is probably stuff that other people have already looked at, instead
right.
of really finding something super obscure. But I think, you know this love of cinema, this thing, obviously it plays into what you eventually would do as an artist yourself. And we took a look at your short films, and I know Andrew
Mm,
is fascinated by this,
I
because
am.
he's big into surrealism. He loves that stuff. He's a Lynch fan, and your short films are all very experimental and surreal.
Yeah, I
And
was I was gonna ask about that specifically just because I saw certain influences. So I was going to ask you, what were your influences earlier on in your life that then impacted you when it came to your filmmaking?
Well, I think one of the earliest influences that I still have now, and if I was ever pushed to say who's your most influential filmmaker, I'd have to say Nicholas Roeg.
mm, yeah.
Um, because I mean, when I was in my early teens, seeing films like Performance, Bad Timing, Don't Look Now, The Man Who Fell to Earth, the non-linear storytelling and the incredible world building of those films, and every time you see them there's something different to them. I mean, I've seen Bad Timing I don't know how many times. I mean, I've lost count, but every time I see it there's always another small detail that I never noticed before, or an opinion on something I didn't have before, or an opinion changes. And likewise Performance. So I think in a lot of ways, Nicholas Roeg, it's his fault. you know, and it was really wonderful for me. I used to program for the Cork Film Festival here in Ireland, and one year I got to do a mini retrospective of like 4 or 5 films of Roeg's, and we got to go to London to meet him to do a little filmed intro, and just sitting in his study. Like I basically just sat back and let the interviewer ask the questions because I was more interested in just soaking in, like we're in his study. I was
Yeah.
looking at the photographs that he has, and what was fascinating was, for example, was most of the photographs in his study would be photos of family photos, like christenings, weddings, this kind of thing. But the one filmmaking photo he had was a photo of him and Donald Cammell on the set of Performance, the two of them sitting together, and it was a not a huge photo, but it was reasonably sized as well, and the way it was placed and everything. So, uh, you know, to like performance still influences a lot of people, but I think even Rogue was influenced a lot by what Donald Cammell was doing on that movie. You know, so uh, yeah, if I had to just state like one particular filmmaker, I'd have to say him. But in terms of like other influences, I pick up weird details and and slot them in. You know, I mean, there was one film I made where the fun of it for me was uh, I wanted it all to be post dubbed. I wanted all the
Hmm.
sound to be done in post, and that was purely because of my fascination and love of watching Italian movies that were dubbed into English or whatever, and that strange hollow kind of sound that you get where it's not location sound, even if it's the actor's real voices being used, and I found that fascinating. So that's that's an influence, or I mean, a lot of my films are found footage where I use previously existing footage and I do something else with them. So, for instance, one of my films, Bogna Korvich, uses footage from a film with Christina Rains, who was a great actress in the 70s and into the 80s. But the idea was she was a supporting character in this particular movie that I used footage from, which was Russian Roulette, 1975. But I made an experimental movie where I just used footage of her. So all the other story, all the other characters were removed, and it was just about her. And I've done that a few times as well. So yeah, so when I was watching that movie, for example, Russian Roulette, I was focusing on her, so her performance would be an influence, and but a physicality, a body language, screen presence, rather than using the dialogue of the scenes she was used, in. So sorry, that sounds maybe a bit of a vague answer. After the Rogue
Yeah.
one was quite specific, and after that, but and tomorrow, if you ask me, I might think of another thing, and another thing. But yeah, so it all goes in somewhere and comes out another way. you know.
Well, I was gonna say the way I look at experimental filmmaking, it can almost be narrowed down like it's a way of stripping down filmmaking to almost it's like very rudimentary, kind of levels, like where it's like looking at a painting, or like still photography, where it's very much tuning in on a particular feeling, or it's trying to invoke something in particular, and it's trying things that might not seem so obvious, but the more you watch it, the more maybe a feeling happens. Because that's what happened when I was watching some of yours, was that you don't necessarily understand what's trying to be said here, or if they're what the purpose of the filmmaker is trying to focus on. But you start, if you the more you kind of like just like let it come over you, you start to kind of feel something when you're, especially like the one film that you did called Dreams Can't Hurt You, where it's kind of it's taking footage, previous use footage, and it's like reuse. It's like starting a scene and then reversing the scene, and then going back, showing like things and from different, and holding on things and repeating things, and it's like the more it does it, the more you start to feel a little bit uncomfortable. And it's not like a thing of like, oh, I'm bored by this movie or something. Like, it's like you start to tune in on what's being repeated, and you're listening for subtle differences, or listening to for subtleties, and it's like, yeah, this is really interesting. Yeah, I mean, explain kind of. Does that feel right? Am I speaking right here?
Oh, absolutely. And with experimental cinema, um, experimental cinema is interesting because when you're watching it, as you just said, you don't necessarily know where the filmmaker, the artist, is coming from. You're just going on your gut response to what you're looking at or listening to, or both. And that might be a very different interpretation to someone else or another person, or even what the filmmaker had. And sometimes with some experimental films, I know with some of mine, I'm sure if people are watching them, they might kind of tune out
Yeah.
and not necessarily be focusing. I mean, that doesn't sound good when you're talking about filmmaking, but for something to be, not 100% engaged. But I find sometimes your mind can wander, and it's almost like a meditative experience sometimes, and it can bring up other feelings, other emotions, other thoughts, other ideas that you might have to create something or whatever. So I think that's really true. With Dreams Can't Hurt You, that was using footage from a trailer, a horror movie trailer. So I was playing with the expectations of how the scene was going to play out. I mean, it's literally like probably 20 seconds
Yeah.
manipulated and played reversed and everything for about 2 or 3 minutes. Sometimes it's uncomfortable. Sometimes I think it's quite funny. Sometimes I always, when I'm watching it with an audience, I saw it once last year with an audience, and there's a moment in it where I just go, if I kept repeating it from this point onwards, I think I'd lose everyone. As in, they'd start getting, annoyed with it, and then suddenly I'll go, oh yeah, and then it changes. It does something a bit different. So I'm into like repetition, but repetition where it slightly varies each time. So it's kind of keeping you on your toes a little bit.
Yeah.
So yeah, but no, experimental cinema is an interesting thing. It's also something that I think if people think they don't understand it, it makes them feel like it's not for them, or it's maybe elitist or something. Like they should be understanding it and they don't. But I certainly don't get out. I don't get that at all from watching experimental cinema, and I don't think people should have that while watching it. I mean, you might not like it, you might love it, but whether you understand it or know the context to where it's coming from shouldn't necessarily matter. I think with a lot of the examples of experimental cinema, anyway.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, for me, out of the couple of short films that we got to see from you, I Wake Up Screaming was fascinating to me. It's just it felt so unhinged yet engrossing at the same time. If that's a way to put it, because it's a haunting. If I read it correctly, wasn't it like kind of taking clips from certain 70s genre horror films and piecing them together, or was it from one film specifically?
It was from one film. It was from the Oliver Stone film Seizure
Hmm.
from 1974, and the obscure kind of, it's weird because when you're watching that particular piece, and I'm glad you liked it, by the way, thank you. um, is, well, first of all, I think the soundtrack that my friend Gabby Bam Bam did was incredible, and I think that adds a hell of a lot to the experience. But that film was, I used a VHS transfer of it. Didn't want to make it easy for myself. I couldn't just rip a Blu-ray or something. I wanted to make the
No.
and I refilmed the VHS off a screen to give it that kind of look, and then pumped up the colors and things like
Oh
that.
yeah.
But in my mind, the obscure kind of detail I was coming from was, that film was about a writer with a family, and suddenly, his friends visit at this house and then suddenly his some of the visions and nightmares that he's been creating in his head are actually coming to life, and attacking and the people in the household. And the obscure detail in that was that, for me, made it some inkling of siblings that were, that it was personal, was that it was about a writer with a family. And there's just certain emotional moments in that where, uh, positive or negative, how the family members respond to each other. It kind of hit me quite hard when I saw it, because I guess I was a year or two. I guess my son was a year or two old at the time. So there's an obscure little detail there, which you wouldn't get that detail from watching the film, but that's what was the germ of the idea for me to work with that.
Yeah, it came across in that way. For me, immediately when I saw it right away, I thought of the Canadian filmmaker Guy Maddin because his films are similarly done in that style of re-editing footage, um, in a certain way to kind of get certain things across. Coincidentally, and I didn't plan this out at all, I had, like, I think the night before, I had just watched his film, The Green Fog from 2017. And for those of you listening don't know what that film is it was co-written, well, co-directed by Guy Maddin, Evan Johnson, and Galen Johnson, and the movie's only about an hour long, and it is a re-edit tribute homage to Hitchcock's Vertigo, where he takes clips from several different films, like many films, and cuts and takes footage from each of them, and in a way reenacts the whole plot of Vertigo with these clips. And it's fascinating the way he did it. But it had that same kind of haunting, immersive score as your film did. And it just reminded me of that so much. And I was just like, it just coincided that I had seen that film right before I had seen yours. So I was, I guess, in that surreal, mode of just like, let me immerse myself in something that I know I will not understand or it will not make a lot of sense plot wise, but it's the energy, it's the feeling, it's all of those things. I think you really have to give yourself over to surreal cinema and avant-garde cinema and just go for the ride, even if you don't know what's going on. Which is it's frightening for a lot of people to do that with movies. People want to be engaged, people want to follow plots, A, B, C, all the way to Z, but it sometimes that's not the case, and that's kind of what I loved about cinema because it was surreal cinema always keeps you guessing, and you never know what's going to happen next. And I thought with your films, that was definitely the case. Um, and even with your more recent one, was probably the most experimental out of the ones we got to watch. Steven, would you say so?
Oh yeah, yeah. I was gonna say your last one, from the Tunnel of Faded Memories.
Great title.
Yeah, yeah, I love the title, and it just sits on a female character who's just in different settings and in different poses, and you just you you spend. I think that the film's about, was it about
12 to 14 minutes,
yeah, yeah,
something like
in
that.
that area, and you just get different images of her just kind of sitting there and looking off into the distance, and I think what's very, really good, what I really like about something like this is that, like I was saying earlier, you're looking at something and you get your own impressions of it, and you start to wonder what she's thinking, or what she's looking at, or what what she has just went through, and you start to fill in gaps with your own imagination.
Mm,
And I think that that's one of the best things about cinema is and I think it's something that gets lost a little bit with modern filmmaking, is that we spend a lot of time over explaining things.
yeah.
And
A lot
I
of
think,
exposition.
yeah,
They feel like they have to lead the audience by the hand down a certain path to get to a certain conclusion because they don't trust audiences to get there by themselves. And
yeah,
in their defense, that oftentimes a lot of audiences don't.
it's
They go
sure,
off
sure.
all willy nilly.
But
Yeah.
I think experimental film, especially one like this film, I think is a great way of, it's an exercise in trying to do more subtle filmmaking. Where you really are using the camera to invoke emotion, and I think that
Mm.
that's what I really love about that film. So tell us more about what went into that.
Well, thank you. And by the way, just to go back, the Green Sea, or sorry, the Green Fog, wonderful movie. And yeah, I endorse anyone. You should see that movie. It's wonderful. The one that was co-directed by Guy Madden. But in regards to the most recent film I made, yeah, well, what was interesting about it is it's footage that was shot 20 years ago. Um, that at the time, what was happening was I was prepping to shoot a narrative short film, um, and it never got made. But the actress I was going to use in the film, who wasn't actually like an actor, she was just someone I had met and thought had great screen presence, and I wanted to see if she had screen presence. So we just, for an hour or two, went to a friend's house and I just filmed her not doing anything, just hanging out. And yet, I think in doing that, you can hopefully sense that screen presence that I sense from her, where you're intrigued by her. You don't. You're wondering what she's thinking. You're wondering what's going on in her head, and it plays out in that weird way with, again, with the kind of video look, the slow motion, and uh, again, that's one of those possibly immersive films where maybe you would tune out and start thinking of something else, but it's put you in a certain wavelength to do that. And it's because that's one thing that's really important about experimental cinema, is it puts you in a wavelength, and if you respond to it, it's wonderful. If you don't, you don't. And hopefully that film will do that. So yeah, thank you for watching it. That hasn't been shown publicly or anything yet. That's a really new one. So it was only just finished the end of last year. So you're one of the first. You
Ooh.
are one
Nice.
of the first people to see it.
Exclusive. We're part of the cool club, I guess. Um, it also reminded me of kind of almost a dreamlike quality. You know what I mean? Or even like a memory, which memories can turn into dreams or vice versa. As time goes on, our memories kind of become dreamlike. And, it was very interesting of you to not. I don't know if there was any audio ever with the footage at all. Now that you're saying it's footage from 20 years ago, maybe there was no audio with it at all, because if anything, that made it even more intriguing and more dreamlike. Because oftentimes when you have dreams that are kind of like memories, sometimes there's no sound in them. At least that's happened to me. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's just an image, or clips of an image, or someone that you knew when you were younger. Maybe it's a family member that's passed away, your friend that's passed away, and all you do is see them like walking somewhere, or you see them looking at you from a distance, or whatever that case may be. And it just reminded me a lot of that. I don't know if that was an intentional, to make it feel, give that extra surreal quality of a dream.
By the way, you guys are so much better articulate. Sorry, I'm not even saying that right. You guys articulate these experimental film discussion topics much better than I can, I think. um, I'm like, yeah, that's good. I must say that the next time somebody asks me some of these
Oh, you
things.
can use it. Yeah, go
Yeah,
right
Yeah.
ahead.
please.
Yeah. No, for example, I just noticed the last three films that I made that I've shared with you guys. For example, one of them has wake in the title, one has dreams in the title, one has memory in the title. So it's a subconscious thing, believe it or not, even though it seems obvious with the titles. Um, but I do think that cinema that transcends you outside of normality is fun, and it doesn't even have to be experimental cinema. I mean, how many times do you go to a movie theater and just get lost in the world or something, you know? And it's that wonderful kind of sense of world building, and you being introduced to a household, a city, a landscape, a set of characters, the way it looks with the colors and I mean, for example, I love nocturnal movies. I love movies that are set all at nighttime, and some of those can be really obviously creepy, but also there's something, can be sexy or cool or something just really beautiful about them as well. I mean, one of my favorite, you know, Dusk to Dawn movies would be like Assault from Precinct 13,
Mm.
you know? And when you're watching it, when you actually start realizing, I love it when you're watching a movie like that, and when the lights go off initially, you see it goes black, but then it's watching the subtlety of it slightly brightening up. So it's still dark and nighttime, but there's no light in there, yet you can still see what's happening in the setting. But it's like the way it's like as if it's moonlight or something like that coming in. And I think experimental cinema, or all cinema, should be about the idea of people being immersed in something, I think. And uh, hope for, and yeah, you're right. There was some just location sound, or sometimes it was me talking. Um, like move your hand, look over there. So, just things like that. But I mean, there is actually a very subtle buzz on that soundtrack, and
I was
that's
gonna
because
say there's a room
mm,
tone, or something that is there, but it's very subtle. Yeah.
do you know what it is? It's the sound of a mini DV camera running.
Oh, okay. I
Because
like that.
I
Yeah.
refilmed the footage off using a mini DV camera, and that was the sound of the buzz, and that was purely by accident because I was filming with the camera
Yeah.
and hearing that buzz, and I thought that sounds pretty good. So then I set it up again just to get that sound, because unfortunately, the best will in the world, even if you have a theater space or let alone at home, you can never get 100% silence. There's always some,
No,
Mm,
no, there's
So
always
very
something.
true.
yeah, so I thought even if there's just a bit of a hum of some kind, that
Yeah.
that would take out any other noises that if they're subtle or whatever. But yeah, no, but thank you. I'm glad you guys got something out of it.
Yeah, yeah, and like what you're saying about immersion, I think there's a little bit of a, I think sometimes there's a little bit of an overcompensation when it comes to how immersion is in cinema nowadays, where they tend to want to build worlds out and show you as much as possible in a world, and they think that that's going to immerse you in the world. But really, I think the more you allow the audience to use their brain to come up with the ideas about the world and fill in the blanks, that's what's going to immerse you more, is that you're actually using your brain to fill in the blanks. Because when you're letting the film show you all the things that you think you want to see, then it kind of takes your brain away from it. I think if you really want to be lost in a movie, the film that you're watching will show you just enough to spark your imagination. And that's, I think, what immersion is. That's what really immerses me, is these worlds being set up and then allowing me to use my imagination. And that's to me good filmmaking. And I think that that's what something like this experimental filmmaking can really do for you. It can really create an exercise for you to use your imagination.
Mm.
Um,
That's a good transition, Stephen, or a good setup for a transition to talk
you don't
about.
have to say good transition
Okay,
when there's
I
a good
was giving you a
transition.
compliment. I guess I won't do that ever
You
again.
don't have to do that. Just switch over.
I was just gonna ask Chris about being a cinema programmer. Speaking of immersion, the cinematic experience uh, can be very immersive, as Stephen kind of just described. How did that kind of come about? Becoming a cinema programmer.
Oh, purely by accident.
Dang it!
No,
I want to have one of them accidents.
Yeah, I know. Seriously.
well, it's an interesting one because ever since I was young, I wanted to be involved in film, but it was always to be a filmmaker. And I mean, I worked out the other day. I've been a cinema programmer more or less. I mean, there was the odd time between jobs and things, but I've been a cinema programmer like 19 years now, and I started quite young in my early 20s. And what happened was I was working in this wonderful, much missed now art house cinema in Cork called the Kino, and I started as an usher. Then I became a projectionist, and then the manager left, and I just said to the owners, "Well, look, until you get a new manager, do you want me to help out for a couple of weeks?" And they said, "Yeah, okay." And even with programming, what happened was they said, "Well, you've been working here a while now. You know what works." So every week, what I do was every week what I would do was make my list of what we were going to show, send it to the owners, and over the course of 5 years, there was only one or two times where they ever said, "Oh, maybe change this or maybe put this in instead." But otherwise, they were like, "Yeah, go for it." So um, and that was back in the 35 millimeter days as well. So we get the print on a Friday morning or an afternoon down from Dublin on a train, as it was then. Used to have a train service for courier drop-offs, and getting it in a car, rushing it to the venue, getting it made up, and getting it on that evening. You know, so it that that it was purely accidental because then after a couple of weeks, when I said I was going to just help out, they were like, "Well, if you're happy, do you want to just keep doing this? And I did. So uh, and generally speaking, there was always one or two films you got absolutely wrong. Like you thought this would do well, and it did absolutely nothing. And it was just like, hey, oh God, And if you have a one-screen cinema and no one's going to that one film, you
Yeah.
feel it a lot more than if it's a multiplex. But but most of the time, looking back on what we were programming and what was available as well and what was on release, I think I had a knack for it, and I hope I still do. Um, Obviously, these days with digital, it's a bit different. You don't have to wait for a print to be finished. Elsewhere, a print can be a digital print can be shared and be sent to you via download now. Uh, but yeah, so it was just sheer luck and enthusiasm, I think, is what got me into this.
Yeah, and the place where you're programming at, the Trickle. Tell us a little bit about that place, because I was looking at images of it, and it's a fascinating building there that you guys do. You not only shows films in, but you do music stuff in there as well. And so tell us a little bit about that place.
Yeah, so Triskel Arts Centre, when I first moved to Cork, it was just this little building next to an old church. And in that smaller art centre building, they used to hold screenings. And I remember seeing some amazing films there on film. Like I saw Thundercrack, Trouble Every Day, Videodrome. I just saw some amazing films there. And uh, that program was wonderful. And they closed for several years and to rebuild the art center to join onto this church building behind it, former church space, which opened in 2010. So it's goodness, yeah, almost 13 years now, and it's a former church, as I said, with the pews in it still, you know,
Them
up,
uncomfortable pews.
upholstered, thankfully.
Okay.
Yeah, upholstered, thank goodness. And so yeah, it's a former, as I said, church auditorium space, but it's been reconfigured as a music venue slash cinema. And yeah, I mean, we try to do like the best foreign language, world, independent, national cinema. We try to do retro cinema, all kinds of stuff. And and that space can be really special to experience certain films in. I mean, we showed Nosferatu last year for its
Mm,
100th anniversary, and and also Vampire as well. And those silent, black and white movies going back to, like I said, one's 100 years old. It really made it something special seeing in that space.
yeah.
Because when you're watching it, depends whereabouts you're sitting, of course, but you can actually see sometimes, depending on the imagery, you can either just be focusing on the screen, but if you actually uh, start to notice, you can sometimes see some of the reflection on the panels of the wood
Mm,
around the space. And we showed Suspiria once, and when Suspiria does that really crazy reds and blues and different
yeah.
colors, it was almost like reflecting back onto the audience. It's just really intense. So yeah, I mean, we're just pulling out of we're still in post-COVID pandemic kind of recovery in terms of trying to get our audiences back at this point. But it's a great space, and I'm happy to. I'm very lucky to be able to be programming it.
Yeah, I just love the idea of that there's a church of cinema somewhere. That you go in, it's like church, and that's how I feel all the time. Coming down to my layer here is my shrine, my religion is all around me. Um, but so of course, a lot of what we know you from is your work on these boutique labels, taking it to physical media. Please tell us, are you a collector yourself? Do you have I know we don't see it behind you, but do you have a little shelf somewhere where there's some physical media releases?
Well, you can't see it, but this entire shelf here is
Okay,
is
I see. Yeah.
is a portion of my collection. A lot of it's in boxes in an attic, unfortunately for
Yeah.
space. Um, this is like my makeshift office, and the other side is books and VHS, and goodness knows what else, hard drives, and old old film cans as well.
Yeah, it's cool.
So yeah, so it sounds more impressive than it is. It just looks like a mess. But no, I am a collector, and I've been doing these video essays now for just over 2.5 years, and I am currently working on my 36th video essay that I've done that's been on a physical media release. So yeah, it what happened was it was one of your previous guests, Jonathan from Fun City Editions.
Yep.
It was him who contacted me to ask would I be interested in doing a video essay for what was their very first release, Alphabet City. And what was nice about that experience was it was purely from me being a filmmaker and from conversations that me and Jonathan had had online, because obviously he's in the States. I've never met him in person because due to him being in the States and me being here, but just from my social media posts and things, he was like, oh, I think this is something you would you'd be able to do. Would you be interested? And I went, yeah. Like, it just never occurred to me before. And that was my very first one, Alphabet City. And yeah, I've just been working on them since. So but
You
yeah,
stumbled into this as well, I guess.
well, the weird
That's
thing
good.
is, I really wanted to do filmmaking. That was what I was trying to do, and instead my two things I've kind of been best known for or have job work with has been cinema programming and making these video essays. And I'm not complaining, but it's just like when you try one thing and then something else comes along, sometimes it's the unexpected thing that works out better and for the better.
Yeah, and hopefully, maybe even inspires you or helps keep you motivated to keep doing filmmaking as well. Because I think I think we can get obsessed with the thing that we want to do sometimes, but sometimes um, you gotta kind of take a step back from it and not make it your only focus. And it can and you're still talking about film. You're still looking at films and looking at them in an analytical way, and it helps, like I said, helps inspire some of your own filmmaking.
Yeah, I mean, some of the techniques, I mean, for example, the the most recent film that you mentioned already, uh, the Down the Tunnel of Faded Memory. Uh, that one, the slow motion effect of that was inspired by what I'd done with the Blue Steel video essay for the imprint release of that movie. So some of the experimental aspects of my most recent film came from one of my actual essay films, you know. So yeah, that was an interesting kind of overlap. And also, I think by editing and cutting and doing different things with sound and voiceover and sometimes text on the screen with the video essays, it does give you ideas and inspire you to do other work, I think.
Yeah, I think especially and I know, Andrew, you just watched it, the Blue Steel video
I did.
essay. That because that film itself has got a lot of interesting ideas to jump into. I think
Yeah.
that's a film that I realized listening to your essay and also the other features on there, that there's a lot more going on in that film that I realized. And yeah, talk about that, Andrew.
No, I was just gonna ask him what his process was when it comes to creating the video essays, because I don't really know how it's done. Do you write out like a whole script that kind of breaking the whole movie down, or are there just certain ideas that you go with? How is that whole process go from like something I'm assuming fairly large to something that's 12 minutes long, as the one from Blue Steel is.
You know what? The process varies each time, and it's often based on the film that I'm doing a video essay about. So, for example, um, my longest video essay was 33 minutes long, and that was on the Vinegar Syndrome release of Censor, the recent British horror film. And that was my video essay was a historical look at the real video nasties hysteria in Britain. So that is a subject that I'm very well aware of, and in fact, I had even been planning to do a feature length video essay about violence in cinema, specifically from sort of the late 70s when things just go a bit nuts. I mean, I'm thinking of the stuff that was coming out of Italy, the stuff that was coming out of America at the time. Around that 1979, 1980 area, where you got Cannibal Holocaust coming out, and even like, are either of you familiar with a not very good murder mystery from 1979 with Audrey Hepburn called Bloodline? Have you heard of it? I think it's
I've
based.
heard
I've
of it.
heard of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's based on a Sidney Sheldon novel, but like I said, it's not very good. But it's old school cast, like you got Ben Gazzara, Audrey Hepburn, you have James Mason, and it's all about like a murder mystery, and it's all corporate, high class business world and everything. But somewhere in it, there's a subplot about prostitutes being murdered and it being filmed for snuff movies.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? So,
Okay.
so
Okay.
that's what I mean. So it's like trying to push in this nasty, seedy element into something else, or even when you see something like The Passage, that crazy film with Malcolm McDowell. Have you seen that?
Mm.
Oh, okay. So it's like an old school, like Guns and Never Own story, like adventure World War II story. But then you also have Malcolm McDowell as this psychotic Nazi, and he plays it like he plays the character he plays in Caligula.
Oh
And
wow.
it's like even James Mason's in that as well. And he apparently said to McDowell, "You're in a different movie to the rest of us." you know. But my point being is, there's just two examples of relatively straightforward mainstream movies that just had these nasty, seedy details put into them. So anyway, sorry, I'm going on a tangent. The point is,
Yeah. No.
I'm hoping to do a feature length video essay on that subject around that time period where things just kind of got a bit nuts. I mean, 1979 was also Caligula, that just weird area. But so when I did that video essay for the Video Nasties hysteria subject for the censor disc, that was something I just jumped into, and it took 33 minutes, and it could have been longer even. I just had to pull back and things. But then my very first one was Alphabet City, and that was only 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So sometimes it depends on the subject matter. Sometimes it depends on the detail I'm getting out of the movie, or the thing I want to focus on. Like I also did a few video essays on the neo noir set, the After Dark neo noir set, Volume 1, and the one I did for One False Move, I think, was almost like 25 minutes. Because it was
Yeah.
just a movie I'm just a big fan of, and there's just so much to say about that film. you know. But then sometimes it might be a smaller detail that I just want to pull up on and focus on, and that will only take 8 to 10 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, I watched your. I think when you go, especially when you're doing stuff about the filmmakers themselves, that them can always go a little longer. I watched your Burning Paradise feature video essay where you talked a lot about Ringo Lam's career, and that one, them are some of my favorite essays because you really get a great kind of compact overall kind of like look at a filmmaker's career, and it gives you so many ideas of where you might find interest in this person's career. Because just watching that one, I was like, God, I got to go watch this movie now. I got to go watch, the last movie he did with Chow Yun Fat. I think it's Contact was the name of the movie.
Oh,
I
full
can't
full full
full
contact. Yeah,
full contact.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's great. It's great. Yeah.
yeah. I was like, I got to check that out, and that he went from this kind of realism to like more stylistic later on in his career. Yeah, I mean, I love stuff like that. So, but yeah, there's definitely an art to it, and it's cool that once again you kind of stumbled into it, and you've been able to kind of create your own voice of how you do these, because everybody does them differently. And I think one of the main things that's important about a video essay or commentary is that your voice is not, it's not coming off like you're necessarily reading off of a prompt. Like, it's got to come off like you kind of know what you're talking about. I think it's important that a commentary, it's not like it's not robotic. It's got to
Mhm.
be like, it's got to seem intelligence. There's got to seem like there's an intelligence. I think yours do that for
I
me.
mean, and I
uh,
mean, yeah, not to be, superficial or judgmental in any way. Sometimes people who do narration or things like that, sometimes their voice is probably not the best for narration or anything like that. But yours
Sometimes,
comes
yeah,
off
yeah.
incredibly smooth, like very smooth, very, tonally fantastic. Does it take a lot of takes to kind of get it right, or is there editing and stuff done?
Well, I have to be honest. I mean, of my 35, 36 essays I've done, there's only a handful where I use my own voice. I
Well,
used
come
to
on, man, you got to use your voice more.
I used to I still do sometimes depending on the subject, but I used to work with, or I do work with, an actor called Claire Loy here in Cork, and she's great. And it was weird. What started was I felt it tonally. It was like this subject matter might, the film. Yeah, that was it. It was I Start Counting was this one of my earliest essays, and I started doing the voiceover for that, and I felt, because of the subject matter being a coming of age story about a young woman, uh, a male voice didn't suit it. Not that it was inappropriate or anything; it just didn't suit the subject matter. So I asked somebody else to do that voiceover, and then just after that, sometimes it's the sheer exhaustion of doing the script writing, doing the editing. Sometimes it's nice just to be able to give somebody else the script, they give it back to you, and then you can work with it. Because you know I joke about this, but sometimes when you're doing one of these video essays, you can get into something like, you could be like a Michael Cimino or something. you know
Yeah.
you just you know and sometimes just for like a 10-15 minute film or something, or piece, and you're kind of going, what? But you get so intense into the research and to the, like, for example, the Ringo Lam uh, essay you just mentioned there. I mean, the amount of clips being used, the different films, sourcing them, then getting the good good quality clips, then sometimes having to do conversion, like technical conversions on the frame rate so everything matches, and all
Yeah.
these you know logistical things. That's why sometimes I got somebody else to do the voiceovers, but I'm getting more into it now, and the last few I've done. But in terms of doing takes, yeah, goodness, it depends. Like, I did one yesterday, and when I was playing it back, I could just hear clicks, or me mispronouncing something, or me misreading something at one point, and just having to do these little fixes.
That
So
that whole thing you just said there is what would keep me from ever doing my own video
yeah.
essays, is
Yeah,
that
I
I
mean,
can't
as
pronounce anything right.
well, not only that, but I'm just saying the technical aspect of it, I didn't even think of it until you just mentioned it. All of the editing of the clips, getting the clips, timing, overlaying the audio, just in general, seems like takes a lot of time and a lot of effort and kind of painstaking. Are you like a perfectionist when it comes to that, or do you get to a point where you're just like, I can't keep doing this. I have to move on.
Well, I think the more essays I do, the more confident I am with the material. And sorry, it sounds like I'm being big headed, but my skills, as in I know what I'm doing, kind of thing, is what I'm trying to say. So there are certain times now where I might be a little bit more, this is fine now. But the first essays I was doing, the first 10 or 20, I would just get so into, like, literally frame by frame editing, um, uh, really trying, and also even just trying to get the volume levels right for the voiceover to dip, or for the film audio to dip, for the voiceover to go up, this kind of thing could just drive you spare. And I mean, I remember, yeah, the first few, even some of the shortest ones were like these, going down a rabbit hole, trying to fix them up, trying to get things done. And also, what I tend to do now is I'll write a script, and then, to answer your question earlier that I didn't answer, I write a script and then edit the material with the script. Maybe sometimes going back and fixing bits because I realize with the material some bits don't quite work, or a point that is being um, explained in the voiceover is actually being shown in the clip. So sometimes I can remove some of the audio or re-record or something and let the clip speak for itself, rather than having me explain it while it's happening. Sometimes, or like just like narrating the action. But uh, but when I first started, I literally would do, okay, first paragraph. I'd record the first paragraph and then start editing to the first paragraph, and then I'd
Mm.
see where it would go and see where it would go. And yeah, that used to take a long, long time, a long time for some of the most more simpler ones. But you know what? This is going to sound like a very bizarre analogy, but like when I'm doing these video essays, like sometimes I'm thinking like, how do I do it like a really taut B movie like Don Siegel would do?
Yeah, yeah. No, 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 yeah.
Like just try to make it really like it's sometimes like they're never long because I want them to be long. They're long because I want them to get all the information across. And if they're short because the information has been conveyed and I don't want it to linger too long.
Yeah.
So I try to make them very concise, very tight, and hopefully you'll get a little idea or perspective on something you haven't had before. And also, to be honest, with video essays, some people like them and some people don't. I mean, uh, last year one of my essays got reviewed. It was the Rush video essay that's on the After Dark set, and I literally had one person in their review say, I didn't like this video essay. I don't like video essays. I don't like this one, and I won't be revisiting this ever again. I was like, oh, that, disheartened. And then a couple of days later, somebody was doing a roundup of their favorite imprint bonus features, etc., from the previous year, and one person highlighted that as their favorite video
Yeah.
essay. So it's tricky, and you just do your best and hope people enjoy them, or get something
Yeah.
out of them. And it's like, and if you make them tight and kind of concise, hopefully they're not much of a hassle to get through either. Hopefully they're short enough to be enjoyable.
I think honestly, the visual essay is my favorite thing when it comes to features because commentaries you're literally having to take the time to watch the whole movie. Um, you know, when you're talking about interviews can be nice, but interviews are something that I think that you can honestly take the time to maybe. I'm not trying to say that this is a better alternative, but you can go to YouTube. You can get that things that, like interviews are much easily more accessible in general than just on a Blu-ray. But like a video essay is something that's created to help contextually bring you closer to the movie that you're watching, or or an actor or a filmmaker that is involved in the disc that you have. And so like I think that it's a really great way, if done well, to introduce you to a whole lot more. And for instance, you sent us also your upcoming video essay on a new Mondo Makama release coming out, the Witch's Mountain.
Mm.
And it really goes through the actor Patty Shepard and her career, and talking about all the different types of cinema that she was involved in. And of course, the one thing that really got me excited was when you go over the section where she was in the Eloy de la Iglesias film,
Mm.
The Glass Ceiling, which I've not seen, and I really want to watch that film now.
Now it makes
And
you
I'm
wanna
like,
see it more.
God, I want to see it so bad now. Not
That
so I'm
happen
like,
I'll say that happens oftentimes in a lot of special features, whether it be a visual essay or whether it be a documentary feature or something where they talk about a larger context when it comes to movies or cinema, or a director or an actor in the film, and they just start dropping all of these movie titles, and you're like, oh, I gotta
And
see this, now I
you
gotta see
just see
that, now I gotta
you
see
see a
this,
clip, and you're like, okay,
because I
that
can't
one
help
clip just
myself.
got
I gotta
me.
see it
Yeah,
all. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Yeah. Oh, it was like you said there. You wanted like Full Contact on the Ringo Lam video essay, and it's, if I remember correctly, the clip that I use is that one with the gunfight where it's actually like the
yes,
point of view of the bullet. I mean,
yep,
yeah, I mean that 10-15 seconds, it sells the movie pretty well, you know. So, and yeah, the Paddy Shepherd one was great fun because interesting, interesting actress. But what I find fascinating about some of these expats who made films in like she, you know, she's American, but she was based in Spain, and pretty much everything she made was, if not it was European, so if not Spanish, it was Italian or what have you. And I think the only film that I saw that actually had her own voice was the Crypt of the Living Dead. So when you watch that video essay and you see that very small clip of her like teaching in the classroom, I think that's the only film I came across that actually has her own voice, and it's a very interesting voice. I like it. But then when you're watching all the other films she did, they were all dubbed. You know, so
yeah.
that's an interesting little kind of detail that I
It's
found.
so like you said earlier. You used it in your own experimental filmmaking, replacing voices. Changing it changes your perspective on the person a little bit when you hear a different tone, a different, you
Hmm.
know, yeah, all really good stuff. Yeah. But Chris, we appreciate you joining us. Um, I really, all the stuff I've come across of yours, I've really loved. Um, we did briefly mention Blue Steel. I really like the Blue Steel essay as well, and we appreciate you sharing everything about yourself and the work you do. And I'm just always super jealous of people that say they stumble into some of my favorite things that I wish I could do.
Mm,
Oh, trust me,
jealous.
I often have to think back and go, how did they get here?
I
Almost
was
like
gonna
that
say, so
Talking Heads song.
what were you going to do if you didn't stumble into this?
That's what it was always going to be, filmmaking, and yet, um, because my interest in cinema is so almost exploratorial, uh, I don't think a straightforward narrative filmmaking path would have worked, because that was
Yeah,
originally what I was thinking. You know, I mean, I've done a few narrative films as well and things, but usually they're too ambiguous or too unusual to be fully classed as you know, a full stop narrative. But yeah, I pinch myself every day going, wow, I'm doing this and it's great, you know. So thanks for having me on, guys, and chatting. I'm glad that there's interest in what I do, that somebody actually wants to talk to me. um,
well, no, yeah, you got even if we're not able to be there and go to your awesome church cinema, because once again another thing I'm jealous of, um, eh, even though we can't be there, we know that we love that there's somebody out in the world that's able to do this thing and keep pushing all different types of cinema on different eyes. So we appreciate you doing that.
oh, no, thanks. And end of the day, that's what it's about. It's and sorry, we'll wrap up now, but the one thing about cinema programming is it's two things. It's loving cinema and wanting to introduce people to cinema, but more importantly, really, it's making sure the cinema that you're presenting is what you think people want to see. Now,
Yeah,
sometimes there's a box office aspect to that, but there's also a duty, if you like, of wanting there to be an audience for what you're showing. So sometimes you can show your favorites, sometimes you can show something that's really out there and you want to introduce people to, but more importantly, you want to show stuff that they want to see, you know.
yeah,
And that's a really interesting balance of trying to, and sometimes that's just out of a love of cinema duty, and sometimes that's a box office duty, you know. There's two things going on there. But yeah, it's an interesting job. Sometimes you have like we just recently showed After Sun,
hmm
you know that film.
the new film.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and in since 2019, which was our last proper cinema year, it's our most successful kind of film, where we actually had a sellout show the other week, which is great. Um, but then other weeks you'll have shows where you might not, you barely get into double figures for people coming in. So it's
Yeah.
this kind of swings and roundabouts. You
I
just hmm.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and I know we almost wrapped up, but I have another question that came to mind. Um, when it comes to the programming, and I don't know how far in advance you guys plan for things, but being that you are a video essayist, have you ever thought about creating some type of contextual thing for a particular maybe group of films that maybe you show, to help, maybe help the audience understand maybe why you're showing certain films?
Like
uh,
curating, I guess.
yes, yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Well, it has come up, and it's something I want to do. Now, I have shown a few of my video essays with films that we've programmed. So, for example, I actually ended up showing Blue Steel recently. So
Yeah,
I showed my video essay. But I guess one of the things that's kind of strange about it is it seems like something you would want to put on at the start for people to go, here you go,
yeah,
enjoy this, but here's something. But the trouble with video essays is most of them are on a bonus feature where people will watch them afterwards,
yeah,
because a lot of the time they give away plot points, plot spoilers, and things. So I did a few, and they've gone on after the film. But the trouble is, very few people stay after the credits.
yeah,
So if I can engineer with enough forethought some video essays, but ones that don't give too much away, then it's something I would like to do. It's very time consuming, but it is something I'd like to do if I can. But I
yeah,
am planning at some point to maybe do some video essays that will be free online to view that aren't on physical media, and maybe they could tie in with screenings I'm doing. You know,
yeah.
so we'll see. But yeah, we'll see.
That's good. I guess I'm one of the weird ones, but it doesn't bother me a lot of times with spoilers. I get in trouble all the time about it, with people talking about movies and spoiling them, and it doesn't really bother me because I mean, ultimately, you got to experience the movie within its proper time frame, and if you bring up a couple points, it doesn't really bother me that much.
Mm.
So it's fine. But um, yeah, Chris, thank you once again for joining us and for all that you do. And hopefully we can bring you back, and maybe we can do our own little focus on something maybe that interests you. Maybe.
Yeah,
So
sure, absolutely. I enjoyed this. I hope it was enjoyable for you guys and beneficial for the viewers, listeners. And yeah, thanks for asking me to be on your show.
of course, man, anytime. So thanks, Chris, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
All right, we are back. Spy number 87, and we're going to talk now about this week's Blu-ray announcements. Um, not a little lean week, not too bad, but there's some hard hitters here.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, it's a bit of a lean week, a little scattered as things have been this month for some odd reason, but we do have the usual monthly slate from Criterion that we'll get to later in the show. But let's get into kind of a couple of random ones here. First up here is one that is interesting to me because it was a film I had never seen before, but it's a director that I know of. And this is Jean Pierre Jeunet. This is his film, The City of Lost Children from 1995. This is getting a 4K UHD release from Studio Canal. It's getting from a new 4K restoration. There's a new interview with him and his co-director Mark Caro. This film has already actually been released in 4K in the Sony Pictures Classics 4K box set that came out last year. It's an 11 film box set that has things like SLC Punk. It's got Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. It's got Run Lola Run in it. It's got Schenectady, New York. And of course, it has City of Lost Children as well. I'm assuming it's going to be the same transfer that was on that 4K because this one's coming out so close. I'm not quite sure since it's Studio Canal. Sometimes they do march to the beat of their own drum. But
Yeah.
when it comes to differences in special features, like I said, this does have a new interview with the directors that I don't think is on that other 4K from Sony Pictures Classics. Also, that Sony Pictures Classics release has a new audio commentary with the director and all, and I don't believe that this one does. Um, or perhaps it does, and perhaps it may not, because there are two audio commentaries on that original 4K UHD release from last year from Sony Pictures. So I don't know if it's got the old one or if it's got the new one, but either way, you're getting a commentary on both of these releases. This did have a regular Blu-ray release back in 2015, which was an Amazon exclusive. It was for the 20th anniversary release of the movie, and apparently it didn't look very good. Um, picture quality wise, but obviously given a new 4K restoration, um, it looks much, much better. And I have to say, after watching this movie for the first time, and just knowing Jeune's, you know, penchant for visuals, specifically in the '90s, it's probably going to look amazing. Just the aesthetic of the movie is kind of incredible. Steven, have you seen this movie? I can't remember if you mentioned if you had.
Yeah, I watched this film as well, and yeah, it is. I told you that it very much made me feel like similar to a Terry Gilliam film, though I'm not really much of a Terry Gilliam fan. But visually, he's made some really great stuff, and in this film kind of has that kind of set design and visual style of a Gilliam or maybe even a Del Toro, which is funny enough the connection there where we got Ron Perlman starring in this film, and Ron Perlman goes on to star in a lot of Del Toro stuff later on. But that was the other interesting thing, was just seeing Ron Perlman starring this and him being a lot younger. It's 95. He's
You
you know
say that, yet I was thinking that myself. I'm like, wow, Ron Perlman looks very young in this movie.
he was already in
Um,
his 40s, I
But
think,
I
by
was
this
I was
time.
just gonna say that. I was like,
Yeah,
he's already, like, in his mid-40s nearly, and I'm like, doesn't look it. Doesn't look it at all.
yeah,
And for those of you who don't know, the premise of this film is that it takes place in this dystopian, weird, cyberpunk or maybe just
steampunk.
steampunk
Yeah,
kind of world. Yeah, cyberpunk's more Blade Runner. This is
yeah,
not
yeah.
Blade Runner.
No,
This is, more steampunkish. There's it's an odd, weird world, a la something like a Terry Gilliam or even later on Del Toro, where where these children are being abducted in order for this scientist to steal their dreams because he's aging rapidly or he can't dream and he needs to feed off of these children's dreams essentially. So that's 'cause children kidnapping is already creepy enough, but the whole processes of stealing the dream when these young children are hooked up to these machines is just rather disturbing, just incredibly disturbing. And the movie opens with that process. So it's not like they ease you into it, it's just there. A lot of screaming going on in that
yeah. I was gonna
opening
say
scene.
a lot of children like legitimately crying, and like it seems like they actually scared these kids, I think.
Yeah,
Like it, yeah,
and then the movie goes along in the sense that Ron Perlman is part of like this carnival, and he has this pseudo youngish brother who gets kidnapped, and he's trying to find him, and he teams up with a bunch of like street urchin kids to kind of figure this whole thing out. And things are revealed along the way, weird things happen. What I like about a movie like this is that it keeps you guessing. Like, you don't really know what's gonna happen next because anything can really happen next. At one point, there are these bugs flying around, like, poisoning people. Other
yeah.
times, there's all kind of machine and mechanics going on. There's this, these group of these, I don't know, street mutant people, not mutant people, but like they have like mechanical eyes and mechanical attachments. It's a
Well,
crazy
it's
dystopian movie, brilliantly designed. The whole aesthetic of it is incredible. So it's going to look amazing in 4K. Probably already
yeah,
does for
yeah.
those of you who have it already. The Sony Pictures Classics release, but yeah, for those of you who don't know, Jean-Pierre Jeunet, he directed Delicatessen, which we've talked about recently. He directed City of Lost Children, and he directed Amelie. Um, and in between there, he directed Alien Resurrection, which is not a
Interesting.
well beliked movie, I would say by most.
No, no, not usually. So there's, I think, like anything that's not popular at first, there eventually becomes a cult status or something because
Mm,
people
yeah,
like to go back and then they like to be like, you know what, that wasn't that bad. and then it becomes a culty movie.
Oh, very much so. That
Yeah,
happens like all the time. Yeah,
all the time.
the reason why we talked about it is because Studio Canal um had put out a digibook of Delicatessen a long time ago. Um, so I don't know if they plan on putting out um a 4K of Delicatessen at some point. I know some other company was putting out Delicatessen in some form recently. Can't remember who,
Mm.
because
But
I think we talked about it.
but
But
I will say that I've been pretty impressed with the 4Ks that I've gotten from Studio Canal. Whether it's the Lady Killers, I've gotten the Outsiders release was really good. There's also, of course, the Ron release. Um, Also, they did the first 4K of Elephant Man, which was good. And yeah, I mean, shit, Total Recall looked good in 4K. I got a lot of
mm,
I got a lot of
yeah,
Studio
you got
Canal
way
4.
more than I thought you
I
did.
got a lot of Studio Canal 4Ks. They do a good job. The Servant was another one. Really good 4K there.
Oh yeah,
Um,
still need to get that. Yeah, they put out a lot of stuff. They
the
put out
Trial, the Trial just recently got put
oh
out by them in
yeah,
4K.
yes they did. Of course they put out Highlander.
I
Had to
wasn't
squeeze
gonna
that
say that
reference
one
in
because I
there.
didn't buy that one, and we know why.
But yeah, they of course we don't have to explain to people how great Studio Canal is.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
always great, but it's just cool that this movie's getting another release. Um, but moving on from there, where do you want to venture to next?
Let's run over to with the couple randoms we had at Shout Factory. We had a couple double
Yes, the
features.
double features.
Yeah, we had a couple double features that dropped today, and one is like an action adventure double feature. You got Wheels of Fire from 1985, and then we have Raiders of the Sun from 1992. Both look like, as you said before the show, Mad Max knockoffs. Um,
Indeed,
yeah,
indeed. Like this, yeah. The tagline for Wheels of Fire is literally the future is now. One man stands alone against a world gone mad. Um,
shit, they
that's
even put Mad in that. Yeah,
yeah. Can you fit Matt in there anymore? And it's like looks like a leather bound guy with a machine gun and like looks like fast cars and desert. it's, I'm describing Mad Max to you
yes,
essentially. Um, yeah, they don't take prisoners; they just take lives. Is the Raiders of the Sun tagline. Which looks like the in the cover in the posters like looks like two guys fighting in a Thunderdome.
yeah.
I mean, yeah, I kind of get the reference. I
Except it looks
believe
more
these are
like, except they look more like Conan the Barbarian characters than
yeah, they got like
you know.
axes and stuff.
Yeah,
I think I know for the there's an interview with Roger Corman for Wheels of Fire.
yeah.
Um, so these may be part of the Roger Corman library.
Probably they're probably
They
exclusive to
feel
the
like it. They
site.
look like it.
Exclusive to the site. You can only buy them at Shout Factory. I'm assuming. But the other double feature we have is, it looks more like a comedy double feature. We have the Great Texas Dynamite Chase, and then Eat My Dust that stars Ron Howard. So yeah, I mean, early Ron Howard. If you got to complete that Ron Howard collection, get some early Ron Howard here with Eat My
Yeah, from
Dust.
1976, which I think he was still
Well, Happy
he
Days.
may have still been on Happy Days at the time because he was only on there for the first like half of the show, like the first 6 seasons, and then he kind of left and did his own thing. Like he wanted to get into directing and then other opportunities and whatnot. Um, but this also has a Leonard Maltin interview with Roger Corman for Eat My Dust specifically. The Texas uh, the Great Texas Dynamite Chase doesn't seem to have any features. But yeah, Ron Howard, 1970s. I've always been a Ron Howard fan. Maybe it is, growing up watching reruns of Happy Days in the 90s. Maybe that is, kind of makes me bias. But
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
I've always liked him too. I mean, I've always liked him as just a film person. He seems to be a genuine film lover on kind of that level of like a Spielberg, where they just or Scorsese, like they just really love film. They like making films. Um, you know, Howard seems to have kind of backed off a little bit on filmmaking a little bit. I think
he does produce a lot.
I was gonna say he's producing more, but it's like every once in a while
I was just say his last few films haven't been particularly
he's been more of a
great.
gun for hire than, I mean, he did Solo. he
Yeah, he
redid the
came in
Solo
and
movie.
I would say finished the movie, but I think it's more like
He redid the
did the
movie.
movie.
Yeah,
I think it's more yeah, he's had a long relationship, of course, with Lucasfilm and stuff like
yeah,
that. Yeah, he's produced probably way more than he's directed. But his last couple of films, like Hillbilly Elegy, which was on Netflix, not great. Um, 13 Lives, which I actually haven't seen yet. It's based on the Chilean miners. Was that Chile? No, Thailand. Thailand miner. No, not Thailand. That was the boys soccer team that got caught in the underground caves in Thailand during the rain season, where they went into the caves like on a field trip and they got stuck in there because the water rose and they couldn't get out.
yeah.
And it was a whole international thing from a few years ago. There was a great documentary made about it. Amazing documentary, which I think was nominated for an Oscar. But this is the live action, not live, but this is the movie version of that documentary, of that
Yeah.
situation. Long film, came out last year, I think, streaming on Amazon, or maybe had a small theatrical release. The movie's 2 hours and 27 minutes. So that's kind of why I haven't watched it. That's a
Yeah, I
long
was
time.
gonna
But the
say.
cast is incredible. Viggo Mortensen, Colin Farrell, Joel Edgerton. Um, Great cast in there. Colin Farrell had a hell of a year last year. He was everywhere. Um,
That
but
happens
yeah.
sometimes. The stuff gets it adds up over. They're doing projects. They sit on the back burner, then they all get released. And one
Oh
actor
yeah. It
wins.
you want to hear something fascinating? Not really fascinating, but remember Michael
Okay,
Fassbender? Um,
I remember
he
that
ha-
guy
yeah, he hasn't had a movie come out in like in years.
since The Snowman.
And he was in so many projects every single year. His last film was X-Men Dark Phoenix in 2019, and that movie got pushed so many times.
Well,
Remember they had
I
to
think
like redo most of that movie.
I
I
think
remember.
I think it seems like he hit like a bad little stride there.
Yeah, whoever his agent was wasn't doing him any
Yeah,
favors.
he did that. It seemed like a good move at the time, but Assassin's Creed. He was working on. He did that and that bombed, and of course
Yeah.
that movie I have referenced, The Snowman,
Yes, another movie that
that
didn't go over
bombed.
well.
But I
That
do
was
want to see.
2017.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do want to see his new film with David Fincher.
Mm,
I think it's called The Killer or something like that.
yes. Yes, it is. It's in
Uh,
post-production now.
yeah,
Yeah, it is called The Killer.
yeah.
He's doing
That's
another couple of projects. Um, what's the one that he's doing? Next Goal Wins, which is the Taika Waititi film. That's
hmm,
I think is shooting now, or maybe it's in post. Um, but yeah, he's back on the man. I'm just thinking, just kind of actors who were putting out tons of work all the time and then disappeared,
yeah,
and and he's kind of one of them. He
yeah.
legitimately hasn't had a release since that's 4 years ago, and then before that was The Snowman, which is 2017. Uh, yeah, that's a
Well,
while. That's a while
back
ago. But anywho,
yeah, back to Ryan
uh,
Howard though,
back
real
to
quick.
Ron Howard.
Real quick,
Yeah, that
if I have to say, run down a few of films that I really liked of him as a director. Night Shift with Michael Keaton, um, and who else is in that movie? Henry
isn't Henry
Winkler.
Henry
Yeah,
Winkler in there?
yeah, yeah. Where they work in the morgue
Yeah,
and
and they
everything.
and
Yeah,
they they party it up.
they start a whole thing with girls and everything. He becomes basically like a pimp. So that's good. Of course,
It's like
back.
risky business meets working in a morgue.
Yeah, yeah. Of course, Backdraft is one of the great films. With fireman films. Um, Parenthood's another pretty good, solid comedy. Cocoon is kind of one of the movies that has been waiting to get kind of I think a good release. Um, we haven't really seen a great release of that yet. You got Apollo 13, Ransom's one I think that I used, with Mel Gibson. I really liked growing up. And then one I think that's pretty kind of underrated and it probably is more relevant now is Ed TV. Kind of
Mm.
kind of on that level of the Truman Show where,
I was just gonna say, I think
you
the
know,
Truman Show took all of that movie's spotlight
yeah,
because that's the one that's Truman Show. When you think of that concept,
yeah,
the you know the
reality,
reality
your
TV
whole
24
life being
hours,
on TV or being on the internet or, you know, is kind of done in that movie as well.
right?
But there's a lot. He's had a lot of like really good stuff in the early
Yeah.
2000s, mid
Oh
2000s that
yeah.
get forgotten about, like Cinderella Man.
Well, Beautiful
Um,
Mind was his Oscar film. You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
that was yeah.
Frost Nixon is underrated.
Frost Nixon, I think, is underrated.
Yeah,
And that movie, I think, gets more relevant over time because the political climate, is the way it is.
yeah.
I think Rush is criminally underrated.
Rush is good too. Yeah,
Like the
Pro-
filmmaking in that movie is incredible.
probably Chris Hemsworth's best movie. It's
Yeah,
probably
acting
Rush.
wise,
Yeah.
yeah, Chris Hemsworth does a lot outside of Marvel that no one seems to talk about,
Well,
and
they
I
they
don't
like
know
that movie
why.
on Netflix, but it's not good. I don't know why.
No, it's not.
And it's
It's
getting a
not good.
sequel.
I know. In the Heart of the Sea is based off of the book In the Heart of the Sea,
Yeah.
based on the whaling ship that you know, crashed and was lost at sea. Um, I actually like that movie. I think I saw that in the theater, pretty sure. Um, yeah, and of course, he had all of his, Tom Hanks, Robert Langdon films, the Dan Brown work, that
Yeah.
is kinda lukewarm stuff. I mean, they must have made enough money because they made, like, 3 of those.
Well, and the power of Ron Howard and his
Very
producing partner
true.
Brian Grazer, they can
Very
get shit
true.
done.
Yeah, he's had a lot of good relationships within Hollywood. I mean, he's been in the industry since he was a child.
Yeah.
Um, going all the way back to the Andy Griffin Show and stuff like that.
Yep.
So yeah, I've always been a big fan of Ron Howard. I've owned so many copies of Apollo 13. It's kind of ridiculous at this point.
Yeah.
Don't ask me why I keep rebuying that movie every time
It's
a new
weird.
format comes out.
It's weird.
But we've got some other stuff here that was announced last week. They did finally detail The Exorcist 3, which I know a lot of people are super excited about. This thing is a 2-disc edition loaded with special features. Um yeah, this is gonna be a big timer. No, it's a 3-disc edition, I lied.
You
Because
liar.
you have the theatrical cut in 4K, theatrical cut on Blu-ray, and the director's cut on Blu-ray. And each disc looks like it comes with some type of special feature. Yeah, that is a loaded release. I mean, wow, that's kind of
And
incredible
then
release.
also, if you want Exorcist, the first one on 4K, go buy that big Warner Brothers set. I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
I'm sure the Exorcist will get its own standalone 4K.
I would hope so at this point. But we do have another kind of big time release, 4K release. And that's from Second Sight coming out in I think that's May 1st. This is Picnic at Hanging Rock, the Peter Weir film, and this edition looks amazing. And
Yeah.
that's an understatement. Everyone seemed to have worked on this edition.
Yeah.
Everyone, at least we know. Alexandra Heller Nicholas and Josh Nelson. Kat Ellinger wrote, I think, an essay for it. There's going to be 2 cuts of the movie here. It's going to be in 4K with a new restoration done by them, and just the cover art of this is just breathtaking. Really is. Like this
Yeah.
box looks like when you put it in your hand, it starts glowing. Like that's the vibe I get from it. Um,
Yeah.
Anything else? I mean, what do you have to say about this?
Oh, I mean, you know how I feel about things that look like this. I want it right now. Um, you know, but I can't say that it's been a long time. I have the Criterion release, and
Same here.
and it's one of the first Criterions I ever bought. So to be honest, I don't remember the movie as well because I mean I know I've seen it, but I don't really remember it. So I can't say right now that I'm like super excited to get this, even though it looks amazing. But I'm sure in the time period before it comes out, I will convince myself that I need to buy it.
Um, yeah, for
So
those of you who don't own the movie already, and for those of you who actually maybe may already own the movie and want to own it again, I cannot recommend this film enough. It's a masterwork, I think, from Peter Weir, maybe his best film, just off the top of my head.
uh,
Um,
look, Dead Poet Society is
I know, I know, I know. I'm well
I'm just
aware of
kidding.
Dead Poet
I do
Society.
like Dead Poet Society, but it's not better. I don't think I
This
think
film
people most
is
consider this one a way above
this
that.
yeah, this may be his best film, and he's a I think a great filmmaker. I mean, he directed Witness, Master and Commander: The Far Side of the World, which needs a deluxe release from someone somewhere. I know
Yeah,
that movie
yeah.
doesn't have a uproarious, fan base, but still, I mean, it's an epic sea voyage film starring Russell Crowe, and all it has
Paul
is a
Bettany. Yeah.
Blu-ray release from forever ago. It's like, I don't know, like, who owns the rights to it and why are they holding it back from us? I mean, it's kind of it's kind of ridiculous at this point. 20th Century Fox, it put out a Blu-ray in 2000 and
Hey,
oh
hey,
goodness.
maybe Mill Creek will put it out.
No, could be with that dealio they just made. Yeah, 2008 was when the Blu-ray was released. They re-released the Blu-ray in 2015, but it's the same disc. There's nothing new about it. So goodness gracious, that needs a new release. Um, but Picnic and Hanging Rock is such a surreal allegorical film, um, dealing a lot with, I believe, feminism and things like that. It's been many years since I've seen it as well. I don't think I've seen it in like a decade, and I do own that same criterion that Stephen was talking about, which came with the novel is actually part of it. And they're putting out the novel in this edition as well.
Yeah.
So you may end up owning the novel twice for those of you who already own the Criterion release. Yeah, so just a general IMDb synopsis. During a rural summer picnic, a few students and a teacher from an Australian girls' school vanish without a trace. Their absence frustrates and haunts the people left behind. Um, yeah, it's a very haunting film. A very surreal, haunting film. Allegorical, like I said. But yeah, I'm super excited about this release.
Are you
Um,
actually gonna pony up the money and get this one?
ooh, I don't know, I may have to. Because I think if I'm just doing a quick glance, the special features I think are vastly different than um
The
than the
Criterion release?
than the Criterion release. If I yeah, I'm not gonna eyeball it right now, but they may be entirely different because that Criterion release came out. When did it come out? 2014. Not too long ago, but still, that's a while. That's a while back, and it's a whole different. We're living in a whole different world now when it comes to special features and all that kind of stuff. And usually Criterion special features are exclusive to Criterion. Criterion does not like to share with others when it comes to their special features for the most part. Um yeah, but
No.
I believe Second Sight is putting out a couple of more things. Yeah, Second Sight is putting out releases. I don't know if they're 4Ks. I don't know if they're Blu-rays. It just says more info is on the way, and this is of High Tension and Frontiers. I don't know why they put the S in parentheses, but whatever. So High Tension came out in 2003. Frontiers came out in 2007. Um, these films are probably well known by reputation. I was telling Steven earlier, these are part of a genre of movies that came out, I think the 2000s primarily, of this genre called like French extremism or French extremity. You can kind of understand what they are through just that title. These are like hyper violent, gory, um, sexually violent, sexual films that were all part of French cinema at the time. Think of Martyrs, uh, films like that. They're just they're kind of torture pornish type of things. Not but they're supposed to be more artsy or more allegorical or actually have a purpose other than just violence on screen. But that may be stretching it a little bit from what I've seen so far. I know these are super popular amongst horror fans and stuff. At the time in the US, we were getting movies like the Saw films, as well as Hostel and Hostel Part 2 and stuff like that. They're all kind of mishmashed in kind of that same type of horror subgenre. But High Tension is very well known. I remember hearing about this movie years ago, and I finally got to watch it. Unfortunately, for years now, it is available to stream on Tubi, as well as I think Amazon Prime, but it's only been available in an English dub version and not the original French. because it was acquired by Lionsgate, and Lionsgate has had that edition out for many years. Also in places like the UK, they had to cut things out of the movie, certain gory scenes, with, blood and violence and stuff like that. But I believe that's all back into what I'm assuming these versions are gonna be the uncut versions. That's my guess.
Yeah.
So the premise of this movie is that, these 2 women, go to, like, the country. They go to, like, visit one of the woman's, like, family, who happen to live in the country, and just randomly some person shows up and starts murdering everyone violently, and I won't say anything else. And then one of the women has is trying to survive.
Hmm.
It's one of those types of things. The second film is a little bit more of, um, it's kind of it reminded me, it reminded me a lot of House of a Thousand Corpses, which
Hmm.
also reminds me of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Similar type of premise here. Um, these group of friends are part of these Parisian, like, protest riots because of an election that's going on. A far right wing candidate apparently has won or has advanced in an election, and there are these riots in Paris. So the police are trying to, like, shut it down. The police are trying to round up the people destroying property, and they decide that they're going to perform a heist in the middle of it and steal some money, but they want to also get out of town. So they decide that they're going to escape into some place in the country along the border and stay at some hotel somewhere, motel somewhere, just to hide out. Moral of the story is, do not go to the country in any country, really. That's where a lot of these slasher movies tend to take place, and because there's a lot of people out there that you don't want to mess with, and lo and behold, they end up running into people they don't want to mess with. These people are these, like, super right wing Nazi people who also happen to be cannibals and are a family.
Oh, the best.
Oh, sounds like I've heard this story before. And they capture people and chop them up and eat them. That's their thing. So these group of friends have to survive or try to survive, and it's gruesome. It's bloody. It's just disgusting. Um, and the movie's like an hour and 50 minutes long. It's a pretty long film to be in that muck and grime the whole time. But if you're into this kind of stuff and you have a strong stomach and violence doesn't bother you, these movies may be for you. Um, I don't know how you deal with, like, violence in film, Steven. I'm a little, like, kind of like maybe desensitized to it at this
Yeah,
point.
I'd say so for the most part. I think maybe the only type of violence that typically maybe gets to me just a little bit uh, is when it's probably violence towards children
Yeah.
or
Violence towards children and animals
an
gets me.
animal. Yeah, typically that gets me a little bit, but
Women, of course, sexual violence towards women gets to me.
depending on
Stuff like that.
how it's visualized, yeah,
Yeah.
sexual scenes can be very disturbing.
But
Like
I meant specifically things like murder and blood and guts and stuff
sure,
like that. Usually it's depicted in such a way that's so absurdly unreal that you can divorce yourself from it a
there,
bit,
there there's a
you
few
know?
movies the one that always stands out in my mind is I Saw the Devil, where the
Mm,
violence is like it's not only just the violence itself, but like the way that the lead up to the violence is. If the filmmaker puts you more in like settling in the fears leading up to it, like the stillness like of a situation before when you think you're being watched or any depending on where you're at when it happens, but like just or if you're at home and you're alone and there's a home invasion, the kind of hopelessness of being alone, maybe like just depending on the situation, it can be worse.
yeah,
um
also, yeah, depending on how it's predicted. There's violence in movies like, I don't know, I've off top don't want ask me why I'm thinking this, like something like Machete or Machete Kills, something like that, where that violence is so
it's
ridiculously
like a cartoon.
absurd.
it
It's like a
you know
cartoon.
yeah.
Um, Yet you can depict that same similar type of violence in another way, and it be incredibly disturbing. Um, it just really all depends on how it's delivered to us, in the form that it is. Some do it better than others, some pull it off better than others, and the intentions are different. When it comes to these films, it's like it's leading. For me, it leads towards the a hyper level of ridiculousness that I can remove myself from it. That's why watching High Tension and Frontiers back to back, like I did, didn't like traumatize me as much as it would traumatize perhaps some others.
You're
Um,
you're already traumatized.
I guess that's also
The
true as
damage
well.
has been
Also,
done.
realizing it's a movie and not real, you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
also it's not like it's a documentary. Those things are incredibly disturbing.
Well, typically, honestly, as you said, desensitized. Like, another way of saying that is that if you haven't experienced it in reality either, it's not. There's not
Oh
a,
yeah, there's not a
you
triggering
know,
factor there.
yeah,
You know,
So
that's why
it's
I think things like sexual violence that could be very triggering for people who have gone through those types of traumatic
yeah,
events and stuff like that. PTSD is a very real thing that people have to deal with in so many different ways. Usually PTSD was associated with people who were in the military or things like that, but I think it's stretched more into the personal lives of the any type of trauma people have to deal with and relive and stuff like that, a part of the whole mental health, discussions that go on now. But these movies, they're movies.
yeah.
So that's those two films. I'm trying to think of was there anything else that was
There, there's the
uh,
TerraVision stuff.
oh yes, there's TerrorVision and we still have to go to Kino too. So
Sure.
TerrorVision, our buddy Brad Henderson, who's been on the show twice now, he of course is on his own now, doing his own thing with TerrorVision. Apparently, he's got so many things lined up. These are some things that he's super excited about, things that he dropped this week. I think the biggest one is a brand new announcement of a film I don't think we had known about before. It's the 2007 film directed by Maurice Devereaux called End of the Line. Um, and I'm not sure when this is coming out, but extras are going to be announced soon. Um, and End of the Line is a movie that's kind of an apocalyptic, a religious apocalyptic film. So without spoiling it, there are these people that go on this train, and then there are these other people around them who all of a sudden get these messages on their pagers of all things. It is 2007. I don't know if people were still rocking pagers back then, but
It's
apparently they were.
borderline.
And it's a little borderline here. I think cell phones were pretty common in 2007. Anywho, these people who get this message on these pager devices are all part of this like religion doomsday Christian cult thing, and this message indicates to them that um, time to start killing people. It's the end. They're going to bring about the end of the world. It's time to save people's souls by murdering them, and you got a group of people stuck on a train underground like a subway system, and this event occurs and they have to survive. That's the premise of the movie.
Hmm.
um there's some surrealism going on in the film. Of course, there's dealing with this whole religious insanity thing that is very real, um religious cults and stuff like that, Christianity pushed to the extreme, dealing with that. But it is a relatively low budget, low key type of film, um, in that regard. It was a bit different than what I thought it was going to be. Because when I thought End of the Line, for some reason, when I thought of that setting, I thought of the movie Midnight Meat Train. I don't know if you've ever heard of this film.
Yeah, no. It's got what's his name
Yeah, I
from
think it's Bradley
Gone in 60
Cooper.
Seconds. Gone in 60 Seconds guys in it. He plays the killer. Um,
Is it?
Vince
Oh my
something.
goodness, is it
It's the guy from Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels.
Vinnie Jones?
Vinny Jones. Yeah, he's the killer. He's the guy on the train.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. And I think Bradley Cooper is in
Bradley
it.
Cooper's in it too. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and this was like, yeah, this came out in 2008 before Bradley Cooper, I guess, blew up when he was doing. Oh goodness, this was even before The Hangover, wasn't it? Before
Oh
The
yeah,
Hangover,
it's
before the
before
A
the
Team,
hang.
for A Team. Um, Yeah, that movie has Vinnie Jones, Bradley Cooper, Brooke Shields is in it. A bunch of, yeah, a few other character actors of the time. But anywho, Midnight Meat Train. For some reason that movie came into my head because I thought it was going to be as surreal, as weird, as kind of unsettling as that film, and End of the Line was a little more straightforward. Still a little bit of surrealism, still kind of some craziness going on, still some tense situations trying to survive this incredibly insane situation. Um, but yeah, so that's End of the Line, and then the other one was actually a movie he had already announced a while ago, and that is Copperhead, dealing with a killer snake, and it's
Yes.
shot on video, and apparently it's been remastered from the original videotapes. Um, and he released the or announced or showed the cover art for the Blu-ray, which looks really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think if you want to get more good information on that, you can go over to Our friend Ryan over at Disconnected. He just had them guys on from TerraVision, and they spend. Brad likes to talk,
Mm,
so he went on. They talked a lot for a couple hours about TerraVision stuff. So you should head over there.
very cool, very cool. Um, and I guess now we can head over towards Kino. Kino Studio, Kino Lorber Studio Classics had a few announcements from the last time we checked in with them. First up here is actually a re-release of a movie that already had a Blu-ray release from Olive Films, and I know that because I own it. It was one of the first Olive Films releases I ever bought, and this is the movie Force of Evil, starring John Garfield. And the reason why I bought this is because Martin Scorsese actually recommended this movie, and I think his journey through American like movies that multi-part documentary he did in the 90s, I think. The parts were up on YouTube forever, and I just used to rewatch them over and over again because he would go through like each genre, like he'd go through like the westerns and the film noir and the gangster films and all the movies that he loved growing up. And Force of Evil was one of them, and I think he actually did the intro for that Olive Films release. Don't quote me on that, but this is getting a 4K remaster from 2022 from the original 35 millimeter print from UCLA Foundation, all that kind of stuff. Um, yeah, I haven't seen this movie in a long time, but I know that it's a solid release. It's a solid film. Um, Steven, have you ever heard of it? And do you like the
Uh,
title?
I do like the title Force of Evil, but I have not seen it. I have not heard of it. But if Scorsese says if I need to watch it, then God damn it, I have to watch it.
Yeah, there
So
was a
yeah.
3 minute and 33-second um, Martin Scorsese introduction for it on that All of Films Blu-ray. How he called it an underappreciated masterpiece, and it deeply influenced Raging Bull, Mean Streets, and Goodfellas.
That says it all right there.
If that doesn't sell you, I don't know what will.
Yeah.
Um, it certainly sold me at the time. Yeah, that Blu-ray came out in 2012. Goodness gracious, that's a time long forgotten. Um,
All right.
yeah, so that
Well,
yeah, just the premise is an unethical lawyer who wants to help his older brother becomes a partner with a client in the numbers racket.
well
Very bland uh, IMDb description there.
yeah, I was gonna
Doesn't
say
really tell you
it's got to
much.
be more complicated than that.
Yeah, there's a little more nuance than that. I can tell you that definitely. So that's Force of Evil. And let's see what else do we have here. Oh yes, a lady in a jam. Uh, can't get more direct than that.
Mm.
So
So is
lady in
she
a
like
jam. Yeah, what are you gonna
like
say?
she gets like jam like jelly all over or
No, she gets in
oh
a bit of a
uh,
pickle, as they
oh a
say,
pickle
or
more food
I guess
references.
more
Jesus
food
Christ.
references. Um,
Ugh.
yeah. So this film stars Irene Dunn, who was just a queen of the screwball comedies, really, of the 1930s and 40s, and this is very much kind of a screwballish comedy, I would say. It's definitely more comedic than it is serious, although it's dealing with kind of a, a serious type of situation. So, uh, So Irene Dunn plays this heiress, not even an heiress. She's just someone who had inherited a lot of money from, I think her grandfather passed away and left her like his fortune or something like that. And she ended up squandering the whole thing because she's incredibly, how do I say this? Um she's not she doesn't really understand how money works.
Mm.
Like she doesn't
Sounds like a lot of
realize
people today.
that she's spending money frivolously. Like she just like randomly writes out checks and doesn't realize that she doesn't have the money to be writing these checks out. She wrote like a $10,000 check to like a veterinary hospital, and then like when her accountant asked her like why did you do that, she's like, well, who else is going to pay for the animals medical stuff? Or she wrote like $7,000 check for this, and it's like, why did you do that? It's like she doesn't have any comprehension of like she's broke. She has no money because she spent it all frivolously, and
Yeah.
she's kind of, yeah, in a way flighty in that way, in that manner. And it gets to the point where her accountant kind of goes to this psychiatric hospital, and asks them, "Hey, like, can you do something about this?" And one of the doctors there ends up kind of concocting this scheme where he's going to follow her around and pretend to be like someone who's looking for a chauffeur job and someone who's looking to be like her like butler or something like that, her assistant. But the whole time he's going to be psychoanalyzing her to find out what's wrong with her, why is she like this. And they end up like going back to like her childhood home and trying to get into like her family stuff and why is she the way she is. It's a very light comedic romantic type affair. They end up falling in love, obviously, because it's old Hollywood and these things happen. But I rather enjoyed the film. I thought it was light and breezy and just a fun, hour and a half watch. And I love
Yeah.
Irene Dunn. I think she's just delightful on screen. Um, so that is Lady in a Jam, a very direct title, but an appropriate title. And the next one also stars. No, next one is Sylvia Sidney and George Raft starring You and Me, which I've seen a while ago. This is produced and directed by Fritz Lang. Came out in 1938. And this is an interesting, darker film than the one I was just describing. So, Sylvia Sidney and George Raft play these two co-workers who work at this like department store. But this department store is one of those places that hires ex-cons for rehabilitation purposes while they're on parole. And these two people, George Raft and Sylvia Sidney, are on parole, and I guess part of Sylvia Sidney's parole thing is that she's not supposed to get in any personal relationships or she's not supposed to get married or anything like that. But they end up falling in love and end up marrying in secret. But apparently she's been hiding uh, part of her backstory, part of her, previous, you know, criminal life from George Raft's character. So that kind of puts a little mystery about her and her situation. But also they have to keep it a secret that they've been married, or else they'll be put back in prison. So it's one of those kind of scenarios. I remember really liking the film a lot. It's Fritz Lang, so I mean, I that name I think sells itself at this point for me at least. It's definitely something I want to get for my Fritz Lang collection.
I also inspired the song from Lifehouse.
Oh, did it?
You
Oh,
and
what a
me,
song!
all of the people. No,
Mm.
probably not. They probably never heard of this movie.
Young, dumbass, um, stupid, sappy, what's that? Hopeless romantic teenage Andrew may have listened to that song on repeat many
Oh,
a time
really?
back in 2002.
Well, I believe it was. If you're a fan of Smallville, I believe it was on.
Oh, it popped up already. Popped up
It's
in
popped up
season
in
one.
Smallville. Yeah, yeah,
Like, yeah, Lifehouse popped up a couple of times, I think, in season one
yeah.
back in 2001 when I was a ripe, I don't know, 14 years old,
Mm.
right in that teen angst, you know, age group, age realm. Um, that's what that Lifehouse music that hit you hard back when you were a teenager. Oh,
I listen to them every once in a while,
yeah, so
just
do
to
I.
feel
I
nostalgic,
I find myself listening to a lot of that 2000s music that I listened to when I was in high school.
like Three Doors
Um,
Down.
Yeah, you know that used to be my alarm every day growing up. I had a radio. I had a radio, but it was like a boombox, like where it had like a cassette, CD, radio, speakers, the whole
Yeah.
big setup, and you could set an alarm. And every day I would set the alarm, and you could set it to where the CDs or CD you had in the machine would start playing. And every day I had the Three Doors Down CD in there, so it would play Kryptonite every morning at like
Of
7 a.m. or
course.
6:30, and that was me, circa 2000. Uh, yeah, another little trip down memory lane.
Mm.
Hmm.
Interesting way. That wouldn't wake me up. That would
Oh,
just keep me asleep.
ironically, it really didn't because I don't know if this has happened. This probably happened to many people. Many people have an alarm, or there was a clock radio or whatever it is. The music or the alarm would go off, and it would go off in the dream you were having, and you thought it was just part of the dream, and you still wouldn't
Yes.
wake up. Yeah, it still happens to me.
Yeah, I have to have just some annoying tones going on for it to actually work for me. So,
Mm, I feel you. Yeah, it just doesn't do it.
yeah.
It just doesn't do it. You think the soundtrack to your life is playing. You think you're in a montage romantic comedy or something.
Yeah.
Um, but moving on, let's move on to another Kino Lorber Studio Classics release of High, Wide, and Handsome, 1937, also starring Irene Dunn. But this is a movie also that stars Randolph Scott, and I did actually get to see this as well. And it's it's like it says it's a rousing musical adventure. I guess that's true. Um, so it's about like a small town that kind of strikes it rich because they hit like an oil thing. Think of like kind of like the Beverly Hillbillies when they hit the oil and they became super rich. But this town is now dealing with having to figure out that situation. They're trying to get a pipeline to go through the town, and they're having trouble doing that. It's also a movie dealing with a romance between Irene Dunn's character um and and Peter Cortland's character. Yeah, I think I pronounced that right. Um, and it all centers around having to deal with the problem of this oil and how to deal with it, and all of that
And
stuff.
and then there goes the inspiration for Paul Thomas Anderson's There Will Be
Yeah,
Blood.
I was thinking a lot of that actually when I was watching it. Also, the title of the film is eh. I don't know if that was
Does
based
doesn't
off. That must have been based off of some type of work. Cause just High, Wide, and Handsome. Um,
doesn't seem
is
like it
more
fits.
descriptive. You know what I mean? So, yeah. So let me get the IMDb description because I'm doing a terrible job describing it. So, picture this: Pennsylvania, 1859. Railroad tycoon is muscling in on oil drilling farmers led by Peter Cortland, Randolph Scott. Cortland must try to save their oil business while also saving his marriage to Sally, portrayed by Irene Dunn. There you go. Directed by Ruben Mamoulian, who I think is a director we've brought up a few times. He directed Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde,
Mm,
the good one from 1931, the one that everybody seems to love. That's the one that just got the Warner Archive Blu-ray release last
yes.
year, which was a great release, which I nominated for one of the categories in Shelf Shock. I think I nominated for
Yeah.
best classic film release,
It isn't. It was. I believe it was a nominee. So
and I think I nominated for best like restoration too because it looks amazing. Warner Archive still does one of the greatest jobs when it comes to just remastering or restoring their films. I really hope
th-
that line never goes away.
if they were gonna make some cool box sets, they should have done it with some Warner Archive titles and not these
Oh
fucking
yeah,
you
yeah.
know
Not these movies they've already released on Blu-ray
in
already.
4K and 4K.
Well, now they're releasing them in 4K. Um, that is the one thing with Warner Archive. As much as I love them, you're just buying the releases for the movies because they usually don't come with anything special with the features. It's usually just the ported over stuff from the DVDs, and if not, then it's probably nothing. Unfortunately, but they do look amazing. They do look amazing. Um, but let's move on from this film. This film was fine. I didn't think it was particularly great. I enjoyed it for what it is. Yet again, it's movies like another kind of 95-minute quick watch. But some stuff I didn't get to see. The last one here is a movie called The Looters. The cover here, or the poster here, says five desperate men and a girl who didn't care.
Whoa.
What a tagline for that.
I don't know what that means, but okay.
Yeah, I know, that's a little cryptic. And also, the title is a little. It just says The Looters. It says an expert mountain climber and his partner find a plane wreck in the Rockies, but the partner conspires with one of the plane's survivors to stop at nothing to steal a large amount of cash found on board.
It's like
Hence the title,
part
The
part
Looters.
part. It's like almost part the plot line for that recent imprint movie, The Mountain. Was it called The Mountain?
Oh
The one that had
yeah, when the
Spencer
one with
Tracy in
Spencer
it.
Tracy,
Yeah.
the one where
Where
he climbs the mountain.
his son wants him to go get whatever, loot the people that were in a plane crash up in the mountains. So yeah, but yeah, I've not heard of this one. I love the poster art though. It looks exciting. Makes the film look exciting.
Well, it
So
does. It's getting a new
yeah,
2K scan from the 35 mm fine grain.
there seems to be a term that's being used in a lot of these recent press releases here. Fine grain, the 35 millimeter fine grain. I feel like there's something new. I haven't seen people use that term, um, but maybe I just missed it.
I heard you.
But
So there is another like kind of mini slate here for April releases. And this is from Sandpiper Pictures. They're putting out 3 releases of The Quiet American, A Year of the Comet, and Bulletproof Monk. That's just Bulletproof Monk is kind of the odd one out.
yeah, well, yeah, I would say so.
um, yeah, I Quiet American. Yeah, well, that's the Michael Redgrave film. Yeah. Oh, yeah, because Philip Noyce remade that in 2002. I remember. Why does that sound so familiar? I think I may have read the book, or I had to read the book in a class one time, or maybe I've just heard of the movie. But, yeah, The Quiet American is the one that jumps out to me the most. Yeah, the 2002 film had Michael Caine and Brendan Fraser.
Yeah.
The Quiet American, the one from 1958, which I believe this is the release of, is directed by Joseph L. Mankiewicz and starring Audie Murphy and Michael Redgrave.
Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna
A
say,
lot of
yeah.
dead air there, man.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I was reading the premise. A young, naive American and a cynical older British diplomat disagree over politics in 1952 Vietnam and over a beautiful young native girl. Yeah, Joseph L. Mankiewicz, I is probably a name many people know of. Um, his brother, of course, wrote the screenplay for Citizen Kane. David Fincher did a whole Netflix movie about him called Mank. And
Yes.
Joseph L. Mankiewicz, I actually have a Joseph L. Mankiewicz section in my collection because I'm such a big fan of his work. He directed Cleopatra, Suddenly Last Summer, The Barefoot Contessa, Julius Caesar, which I believe is the one with Marlon Brando. He directed All About Eve with Betty Davis. Um, yeah, he Ghost and Mrs. Moyer, which is something that needs a Blu-ray release, or it doesn't need a Blu-ray release. It needs a re-release because that Blu-ray is now out of print and goes for tons of dollars on eBay. When I should have bought it when I had the chance. I used to see it in like Barnes and Noble and at bargain bins and stuff like that. Um, yeah, he directed the movie Dragon Wick, which has a Blu-ray release, I believe, from Indicator. My memory serves. So does Suddenly Last Summer, coincidentally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Big fan of Joseph L. Mankiewicz. And he also directed There Was a Crooked Road, A Crooked Man, which is I think that's the movie starring Kirk Douglas. Yeah, Kirk Douglas, Henry Fonda, Hume Cronin, Warren Oates, Burgess Meredith. What a cast! Jesus,
Oh yeah.
what a cast. So yeah, that's the highlight for me from that group of movies.
All right.
So I think we can move on now to
Let's go to the
is it Criterion time?
Criterion Barnes and Noble sale. I
Nice
was just having a
improv.
reminiscent of my song that
Oh,
I did back
what a
5
trip
years
down
ago.
memory lane.
Yeah. But yes, we are to the May releases of Criterion that were announced the other day. And we got, as we've been getting a lot lately, we got some upgrades, but we did get 3 new releases that are pretty exciting. Let's start with the upgrades. We're getting Branded to Kill in 4K, which is I think a good choice to get a good 4K for. It's a beautiful film already, and this should make it even better. And of course, the other film that's getting a 4K is in the same realm. Another black and white film, Wings of Desire, from Vim Vendors, which they. Krazan just put out that big box set of Vin Vendors, and so we were all kind of wondering if Criterion was still going to be able to put out some 4Ks, and it looks like that's going to happen. So, um, these two right here, man. I mean, are you excited to get an upgrade on either of these? Of course,
Um,
there's not going to be new features. I mean, it's not.
no, no, I'm looking at it right now. Just Branded to Kill. I've had that Blu-ray in my collection for such a long time. There's Branded to Kill, and then there's his other film. Um, I almost said Brand Upon the Brain, but that is not his other film. Um, yeah, this is from Seijun Suzuki.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, his other film is Tokyo Drifter. I've had
yeah.
these in my collection for a very long time. Probably bought them at a Barnes& and Noble Criterion sale early on in my adventures there. Um, yeah, I'm actually super excited for this. It's I hope it looks amazing. It's black and white, great vision. The movie already had great visuals to begin with, and it already looked amazing on Blu-ray. This is the movie that has the yakuza assassin who he has a fetish for sniffing rice. I
Mm,
remember
mm,
that
yep.
for steamed rice specifically.
Yeah.
And the assassin is portrayed by Joe Shishido. Yeah, he botches a job and ends up a target himself. I love the way they describe this in the blurb here on Criterion.com, where it's when Japanese new wave bad boy Seijun Suzuki delivered this brutal, hilarious, and visually inspired masterpiece to the executives at his studio, he was promptly fired. I love Seijun Suzuki. I love that he lived for a very long time to the point where we got to see him in interviews um for his work, later on up until his passing. And there's an interview here from 1997 that's on the old Blu-ray and going to be on this 4K. So yeah, I like Branded to Kill. Kind of a surprise 4K upgrade. I never even crossed my mind. But for me, Wings of Desire it's a film that changed my entire perception on cinema, and it's probably one of the greatest films I've ever seen, if not the greatest film I've ever seen. Um, the I can't even describe how masterpiece of a film this is. The entire sequence that's just in black and white with Bruno Ganz walking around Berlin, I believe, and just having this inner angelic monologue of the essence of humanity and just commenting on humanity in general is some of the most brilliant work I've ever seen in all of movies ever. Um, just incredible. It's poetic, it's beautiful, it's soul searching, soul crushing. Um, Incredible movie. Wim Wenders, I don't think ever made a better film than this, even though his other films are amazing. So this getting the 4K upgrade, thank goodness. Thank goodness that they're doing it, because like Steven just said, it does have a 4K upgrade already, but it's in that giant box set, and I think they did they release it individually as well?
I believe
Or
so. It was the only film I think they
yeah, it was the only one they
released
released, and
singly.
that was
Yeah.
Curzon. Wasn't that
Yeah,
Curzon? Yeah.
Curzon. Yeah.
So it's nice to
Yeah.
kind of upgrade this. Also, this we talked about it. Um, I don't know when we talked about it recently, but it was the criterions that were part of that bad batch of criterions that had to be you have to have the discs replaced. This was one of them, at least for me, and I never got the disc replaced on it. So
Hmm.
I don't have to now, I guess, because I could just upgrade to this 4K,
Yeah.
and I could just let that disc slowly rot away, I guess. As sad as
That's
that sounds.
sad.
Um,
Yeah.
for me, I don't care that it's not getting any new special features or anything like that. In order just to have this film in 4K UHD is enough for me. It's one of
It,
those
it
where I don't care.
yeah, it would have been nice if they'd have put a feature of or just made it a double feature release with City of Angels. I
Oh, of
mean,
course.
they should have done that.
Oh.
You know that it would just
Uh,
make this even more complete of a
I'm
release.
actually yeah. What is interesting is just rolling through my head. I was thinking of that while I was saying that whole spiel. Is City of Angels is a remake of this, um, which is having its 25th anniversary this year. So Warner Brothers, get your act together. Why wasn't that in one of those box sets?
God, why wasn't it in one
Damn.
of the box sets? There should be a whole box set of just Meg Ryan movies
I
with,
thought you were gonna say Nicolas Cage.
well, that's what that goes without saying, um, but Meg Ryan at that time was on top of the world. You could
Why,
do a whole
yeah,
box set of
Meg
yeah.
Ryan was a big star of, like, the I would say, '80s and '90s, and, for some reason, she doesn't get talked about a lot today, you know?
She's yeah, well,
You know,
it's
especially all her work with Tom Hanks and stuff like that.
yeah, Harry Met
A
Sally and
yeah, a lot of those, movies are kind of scattered amongst studios, so you kinda have to piece them together. You know, some are from Warner Archive, Sleepless in Seattle has a release from had one from, like, Twilight Time, I think did it have one from Indicator? No. Yeah, Sleepless in Seattle has had a few releases. Yeah, it had a lot, like a 25th anniversary edition. It's had all kind of ones from all kind of different companies. Um, yeah, no, I was way off. It was also Sony Pictures released it in the UK, but I'm going off. But anywho, you're right. Yeah, Meg Ryan at the time. But even Nicolas Cage's work is kind of spread out too. That's why
it
it'd be
is.
tough to get a box set of his stuff.
Yeah, well, I just create my
One
own when
can
I get all this
dream.
shit.
One can
When
dream.
I get all this shit, I'll just make my own cool box sets.
Do you have City of Angels on Blu-ray?
I do.
Okay,
I do.
just want to make sure. Came out in 2014.
I got it. But
Still a $20 Blu-ray. Damn.
well, it's
Okay.
because it's amazing. But,
Uh,
yeah,
Goo
I know.
Dolls.
Shut up, Steven. But the other films we got here, we got a few
I know.
new additions to the collection. We'll start with the other 4K here, which is a new film to the collection, and that is the film starring Susan Sarandon and Gina Davis, Thelma and Louise, coming 4K. This is a big one. Um, I believe this is isn't this a Warner Brothers release?
Let me take
Um,
a look. I think I have the Blu-ray. Um, yeah, I have the 20th anniversary Blu-ray. Put out by MGM.
oh well, so a title that was probably part of whatever deal they got with Amazon, where they're working with Amazon. They were able to get this one,
Yeah.
and
Luckily, some of those
yeah,
MGM titles are seeping through. They're seeping out.
we're
Uh,
seeing you're seeing Criterion put out some of their stuff. Also, Fun City is putting out a lot of
I was
MGM.
just gonna say, I'm looking at
Yeah,
Married to the Mob right now and it has the MGM logo
yeah,
right on the side of it.
yeah. They've been doing that,
So, what do you think of Thelma and Louise?
I like it. I mean,
Okay.
it's you get an appearance by Brad Pitt in there as well.
Oh yeah, talk about
Um,
young actors
but
earlier.
I'm just a really big fan of these two actresses. I've always liked Susan Sarandon, and I think Gina Davis is an actress that um, has such a fantastic filmography, and especially in that time, late '80s into the '90s, with things like A League of Their Own and Beetlejuice and um, you know, just a really great filmography, and just I've always liked her presence in film, and of course this is a film by Ridley Scott, one of his early films. and it's nice when you see a director who's now primarily known for kind of action pictures. Seeing some of the more obscure kind of stuff of his, him and Tony Scott, his brother, both did some more interesting stuff early on. Um, and
Well,
then they
yeah.
kind of got locked into action directors later
Well,
on.
you say that, yet Tony Scott had already been directing for 20 years when he made this movie. Um, what is or Ridley Scott, I should say.
Yeah,
What did I say Tony or did I say Ridley?
you said Tony.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah, Ridley Scott had already been directing for 20 years. Um, Ironically, Ridley Scott didn't like come out with his first film until he was 40, like 40 years old.
yeah.
Um, Ridley Scott, I think I
He'd been
believe,
doing a lot of TV and
yeah,
commercials and shit.
Ridley Scott, I think got his career started in the 60s, if memory serves. And it wasn't until the 70s that he started doing feature films. I think The Duelist may have been his first film.
Yeah,
And that was in the 70s. And that's had a few Blu-ray releases here and there. But Thelma and Louise is notoriously a film that is incredibly featured in pop culture. It's been referenced, parodied, satirized, or redone in so many different ways. Um, and it's a really well-known film starring two very well-known actors and actresses. And they Yeah, there's so much, feminist allegory within the film, so much female empowerment within it, so much greatness within the film. Yeah, I enjoy the film very much. When it comes to special features here, since this is a film that's making its debut, it's not one of those upgrades that we were just talking about. I'm trying to see if there's like some parallel between the MGM releases, which I think was the same disc over and over again, and this release. Um, and it looks like this is getting some stuff in it that the other one, doesn't have. Um, you'd have to do a better side by side comparison. But it's nice to see a new film, enter the collection. This is not Ridley Scott's first foray into Criterion. If memory does serve, Blade Runner was on Laserdisc back in the 80s. So that's
yeah.
technically
If you want to go back to then, I don't know that. I mean, you could say that about a lot of movies. Ghostbusters was in the Criterion
very
Collection.
true. I think I have the Ghostbusters, Criterion Laserdisc
Wow,
just for the heck of it. Like,
just for shits and giggles. Yeah,
I don't have any way to play it. I
yeah, yeah,
don't have any
yeah.
way to play it. Um,
Just a display piece. Yeah,
just a display piece, just bragging rights, I guess. I bought it. I had I had a sick, not a sick feeling, but I had this idea years ago that I was gonna get a Laserdisc player. I was gonna get some Laserdiscs. I wanted to have access to every format that I could. Like, I still have my VCR in a cupboard somewhere, and I was like, "Oh, what if I have, like, a Laserdisc player too, just for the heck of it?" I could hook that up. I could hook up the VCR. I could have all that set up all the time just for the heck of it. Because I've seen people who have that. They have all these different setups. Well, they'll have their VCR hooked up to an old CRT TV, or they'll have a Laserdisc hooked up to an older TV, and of course they'll have their Blu-rays hook Blu-ray stuff hooked up to another TV. And it's like, if you have the space and the money for all that, that's awesome. And I tried to do that myself, but then I quickly abandoned it, realizing it was just way too
it
much.
becomes too.
It was
It's
just way
just
too
like
much.
anybody that kind of keeps every format. I don't see how they do
I'm
it.
jealous of them, but I'm also
I'm not.
like, damn, that's just a lot.
It's just too
It's a
much.
lot.
It's
Like,
taking in too much.
I've got I've got enough dealing with just Blu-rays, hundreds, thousands of Blu-rays, and then having to add multiple formats to that. Like, you almost need your own library to fill all that
Yeah,
stuff.
you need definitely a storage unit of some kind. But
I've seen people who have, like, every single format that's available, like, going down to, do you remember when, um do you remember when, like, PlayStation Vitas, you could buy the movies to play on PlayStation Vita? The
mm,
handheld PlayStation console thing they tried to do a few times in the 2000s and 2010s. Um, uh Yeah, and they used to put movies on little tiny discs to put in that so you could watch it on that. It was a little like pre, how now we can stream stuff to our phone. It was kind of that before now. But I've seen people even have versions of movies on that in their collection, and I'm like, damn, how do you dig
Yeah,
that
it's
out? What archive are
yeah,
you
it's
going into? Because like, I remember those at stores, and I'm like, this is no way. Like, and it was only a small amount of movies they ever put on that format. I forgot what that format was called too. There was a special format for it. Um, but they had like things like the James Gunn Scooby Doo movies would be on that format and stuff like that. It was like kiddish type things, and it's like, damn, damn, just wild. But that was my idea at the time when it came to Laserdisc, was I was gonna get some Laserdisc player. But then I had to do I had to do all of the research to go into it, like the different types of players, the different types of formats within Laserdisc, the good ones, the bad ones. It just became a whole thing. But
yeah,
it's nice to see Thelma and Louise get a nice upgrade here, because this is probably going to look so much better than a Laserdisc or that Blu-ray that's been chugging around for a few years. Um, but other than that, we have something that is, thank goodness this has finally come out. Oh, I can finally breathe a sigh of relief. I can stop going to the biggest mountain and yelling from the top of my lungs.
it you're not Rocky.
No, oh, I try to be, try to be.
Yeah, you're
But
not slock jawed like Stallone, so
this
you're not
is,
gonna fool me.
yeah, I know. But I've been screaming from the hilltops that this movie has needed a Blu-ray release for years because the DVDs have been out of print for so long, and that is Peter Bogdanovich's Targets. The late great Peter Bogdanovich, his movie Targets, which came out in 1968, is finally on Blu-ray, and it's the only Blu-ray release of this movie that exists right now. Um, Produced by Roger Corman. It was the movie that the making of this movie is so fascinating. How Boris Karloff ended up in the movie just because he owed like some extra days of filming to Roger Corman, and they just decided to put him in this movie. And he created a movie that is more relevant as time has gone on than so many films. And I'm just glad it's finally getting a release. This will be a must, but this is a must buy just for
It's
me,
gonna
just an absolute
it's
must because I
gonna be
don't
a
own
po
it,
yeah,
don't have it.
it's gonna be a popular one. Of course, some months back ago, the BFI had announced they were gonna release this, and then they had to pull it for reasons, and apparently they are still gonna be putting out their release. They had released that came out and said that just after this release got announced that there is still an intention to release the BFI version, but they were kind of waiting for the elements to be in the proper condition to then do that. So now so there is still going to be a UK version coming out.
Yeah, and
But
this
yeah, I
this is
yeah
only on Blu-ray. This is not a 4K release.
yeah
Um, but yeah, as you
yeah.
were saying,
So
Steven, I'm
this is
assuming
a
you're excited.
oh, I'm excited. This is I mean I want to say it's a great film, but it's a disturbing movie. Of a young man who seems to for no real reason at all, which is kind of how it is in real life. Sometimes you just don't understand what's going through people's minds, just decides to start buying a lot of weapons and guns and just starts shooting at people on the highway. I
Randomly,
mean
he goes up
yeah,
to like I think it's the top of a water tower or top
it's a
of
water
some
tower. It's like
building or
an either
something.
it's a gas company or something like that. The whole, or something, and it's right off the side of the highway. And he just goes up there with a bunch of his guns and starts shooting at people randomly on the highway. And it's, there's, it's just, it's one of them things where it's so blunt, and it's so kind of takes you back that they go there, you know, um, in no real subtle way, and it's impactful. It's a film that really is an impactful watch. Once you've seen it, it's kind of hard to forget it. Um, and I think that's some people might look at this film as being a movie that's just trying to shock you, but I think I don't think that the violence is nearly as explicit as the is that the actions are just so crazy and like you said, so relevant
Mm,
to today, especially where we're having a lot of
where it happens
shooters
seemingly
and
every day. It
It feels
happens.
like there's always a new report of somebody taking a gun to the store, or shooting up at a large crowd of people, and
Yeah,
this,
it
yeah,
happens. It happens everywhere. And
yeah,
you know, specifically to come out, I think at the time in which this film came out, which must have been incredibly bold to make this film. There were obviously, if you're hip to history, there was a series of political assassinations in the 1960s. JFK, his brother Robert Kennedy, Martin Luther King Jr., which I was assassinated in 1968. I mean, it's really and that to have a movie that is not even about political assassination, but just about kind of wanton death and violence in a decade that was, had that in abundance, including the war in Vietnam, where thousands of American soldiers died in that war, and that whole generation and whatnot. Incredibly bold film to make at that time, and the film is so low key as well. It's
yeah,
kind of very much made in the B movie type of way, yet it's so incredibly impactful. And I'm glad this is finally getting a much wider release. I was super excited for that BFI release. That when it was kind of canceled or postponed for the moment, I was kind of bummed out. But now that I know this is coming, I'm rejuvenated again. And this does have a new interview with Richard Linklater, which is fascinating to me. Always love to hear him talk about anything really. It's got a new 2K restoration that was supervised by Peter Bogdanovich, who of course recently passed away. So we know this has been in the works for a while. We can assume,
yeah.
because I believe he passed away 2 years ago. I want to say 2022. So last year. Sorry, I get my years confused. And then yeah, it's got an intro by him from a while ago. Um, it's got interviews from production designer Polly Platt, who was his ex-wife. Yeah, I can't wait for this release. Like
Yeah.
I don't know if I can wait till the Barnes and Noble sale for it
Well, I
because
was
I know
gonna
this thing's
say,
gonna sell out like you wouldn't believe. This is gonna be
yeah,
the hot seller. When it comes to the flash sale that we're probably gonna have in next month or month after that,
it's
Barnes and
flash
Noble
sales.
sale.
Yeah, I think you're gonna have to wait for Barnes and Noble sale. I don't think we're past the flash sale point. It's gonna happen this month, so um,
Oh yeah, this is not. Oh yeah,
this
so
is
this
the
is.
flash sale month.
Hold
Yeah,
on, hold on. When's this coming out? Oh, this is coming out in
May.
May. Yeah, the
Yeah,
flash sale is coming out like next month. But
this month. It'll be this month.
I think
It's
there's
it's
only a
usually
week
in
left.
February.
There's only a week left.
It's gonna be this week. It's gonna be this coming week.
You think it's gonna be this
Um,
coming week?
I think so.
Okay.
But yeah, this and Small Axe, which was recently announced,
Mm,
I think, are two that
yeah,
I
I got
have to
those
get.
2 circled
Yeah.
on
Um,
my. I'm already making plans for the upcoming sale.
yeah. But
I
the
think
last one,
this Axe
yeah.
Inland Empire. Yeah, that's
Yeah, yeah, Inland Empire is another good one. That one isn't. I'm not in super. I mean, I want to see it, but it's not a
I
must
just
right
I
away
just
for me.
want the upgrade over the DVD that's been sitting on my shelf for forever.
Yeah,
Um, but there is one more film, and it's not a small one, at least not to me. It's Celine Sciamma's getting another entry into the collection with her newest film, Petite Maman, which we just talked about, didn't we? I feel like we just talked about this with
I
when we
don't
had
know.
Celeste on a few weeks
Did
ago.
we? Did we?
Yeah,
Huh?
because she and I talked about how we both saw the film. She wanted to know what I
Okay.
thought about it. I remember conversations apparently. What's weird is I
Sometimes
don't remember a lot that goes on
I
this show,
was gonna
but I
say you
remember
remember
things like that.
sometimes. Yeah,
I remember
yeah,
conversations about movies, but I don't remember other details about the show. Like
yeah.
I need
Well,
to people don't realize I need to go to Steven like all the time to remember
that's why there's a
things.
partnership here.
Yeah.
Hopefully, one of us knows the other thing. Just like in a relationship with you hope when you have a child and they come with a question, maybe one of you can answer it.
Mm.
Maybe the other one
Yeah,
can't.
hopefully.
Uh,
Or else you're
you
both
know,
kind of
or
stuck.
you had
You got to
you
figure out
just come up
with each
you make
other.
up something. You make up
Mm.
something. But yeah, this is same Celine. Uh, her last name, Celine. How you pronounce it?
Siyama?
Sama- Sayama. Yeah, she did Portrait of a Lady on Fire, which I love. Came out a couple years ago. And it was one of them. It was one of them films that kind of got snubbed from the Oscars. I think it was an international film nominee, but probably should have been the Best Picture overall, nomination. I don't think it got that. Um, but yeah, I didn't get a chance to see this one.
Okay.
It's not a film. I know it's a short film. I know
It is
it's
streaming on
on so
Hulu
yeah. I was gonna
as
say
of
it's
right now.
streaming somewhere, so it's easy to get to.
It's only
But
73 minutes
yeah,
long. Unfortunately, this Blu-ray only has one special feature, and it's a
yeah.
conversation between Celine Sciamma and filmmaker Joachim Trier. That is it, unfortunately.
Unless you want to count the essay
Oh,
with the
true,
author,
true.
so Mayer, yeah. So
There,
there is a
yeah,
booklet with an essay.
yeah. This I
Um,
absolutely loved this movie. It's so low key, yet I think so powerful. But it's such a delicate, beautiful film exploring a lot of really big themes in a small way, and it gets its
yeah,
point across very, very smoothly and very, very well. And the filmmaking is just so effortlessly fantastic that it's just wonderful to me. It centers around a young 8-year-old girl named Nellie who is who's dealing with the death of her grandmother, but also dealing not only with that and processing that, but also processing the way in which her mother is dealing with that. And the film kind of approaches that, I think, in a very unique way, a way in which this young girl can connect with her mother, with her family, with grief, with loss, and with time, and with also the idea that every generation has to deal with certain things. Specifically, I mean, uh, death and grief and loss are things I think all of us as people have to deal with, regardless of what decade you lived in, what generation you're from, whether you're Generation Z or the baby boomers, you all have to deal with that in a specific way. So I think the film has a beautiful universal theme in that regard. And it's just, I think it's just a really well made film and it doesn't overstay its welcome. There's no extra plot in the film to trigger some type of extra subplot. It's very direct at 72 minutes, and it's going to be, and it's a very specific film. That's why I really loved it. I think it pairs nicely with her other work. Her other work really deals with themes similar to that, life themes, specifically life themes when it comes to women and things that they have to deal with. I'm thinking of the movie Girlhood. I'm thinking of other things. Even in Portrait of a Lady on Fire, that's dealing with romance and love and connection and stuff like that. Very human things. I love Celine Sciamma. I love listening to her interviews that she does. So hopefully this interview is a decent amount of time. You can go on YouTube and listen to a lot of her interviews and whatnot. So yeah, I'm excited for this release. This will be one I definitely pick up to pair with Portrait of a Lady on Fire. But yeah, I thought this was a solid release slate. It's a little mix of stuff we know, stuff we may not know, and surprise for me. Brandon to Kill targets kind of a big
yeah,
surprise to me.
yeah. I agree. I agree. Yeah, it's been a pretty good start for Criterion this year. I think there's been a good mix and some really nice surprises with you know some of like I said earlier, small acts and things that we didn't think we would get. Of course, they're continuing to throw in some 4K upgrades.
Yeah, like I'm looking at Dazed and Confused right now, Mildred
Yeah,
Pierce, but then they'll throw in something like Last Hurrah for Chivalry, the John Woo film. Um,
yeah,
I wasn't expecting that, especially since especially it had already been released previously by another company. I was not expecting that at all. Um, and yeah, so they're kind of mixing and matching certain things, and I'm liking it. But you don't have to buy everything, like I say.
yeah.
So if you don't want one of these upgrades,
No,
don't get it
it's yeah,
or save
yeah,
it for
yeah,
later.
yeah. But that's it. That's it this week, guys. Once again, thank you, Chris O'Neill, for joining us. Had a great time talking with you, and of course, before I forget, I believe this episode. Hopefully, I have this episode out on February 18th, a Saturday. So what I'm saying now should be relevant. That the Shelf Shock Rewind Awards will be live on February 19th, Sunday, February 19th. I will be one of the two main hosts. You have Ryan Verrill over at Disconnected, who will be the other host. And of course, a lot of other appearances from other YouTubers, podcasters, and maybe some others will be showing up to present some awards. So you'll have that. And along with that, you'll have a lot of really great giveaways that me and Ryan were able to scrounge up from some of the great outlets that we love to buy from: Diabolic DVD, Orbit DVD, Grindhouse Video, and then Jesse from Diabolic's label Cauldron Films is also gonna give away some Blu-rays. So we got a lot of good stuff to give away during the show, and it'll be fun to finally announce these winners. We have 23 categories that were voted on by everybody, and then of course there's the fun picks of favorite labels from Region A and Region B that the community voted on as well. So
yeah, there's plenty of categories to really fill out a lot of the stuff we've talked about here on the show over the last year, and other shows as well. And if you're not able to catch it live, I'm assuming it's going to be up to people to watch it afterwards.
It'll be back. It'll be on our channel, Disconnected, and of course Shelf Shock Rewind's got his own YouTube channel, so you can go over there and subscribe there as well. And hopefully quickly, if you're not one to want to watch the whole show, which I don't know why you wouldn't. God, I mean, it's going to be a fun time. You should be watching the whole thing.
It's going to be better than the Oscars.
It's going to be better than not. There's going to be a big budget for this thing. But if not, if that's not your thing and you just want to find out the winners really fast, I should be breaking these up into the kind of the categories, making it a little bit more straight to the winners and nominees and all that stuff in the next week or so, hopefully. So yeah, that's it for that little extra announcement there. But Andrew, where can you be found?
You can find me on Twitter at Capzilla06, as well as our YouTube channel, Chasing Labels.
And you can find me on Facebook, Stephen Billings. You can go over to my Letterboxd and follow me over there, see what I'm watching. Of course, you can also find me at the other Chasing Labels pages, whether it be our Instagram, Twitter, and then you can find the audio for the podcast on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and other places. Thanks again for listening, and hey, keep on watching the movies.
I know I will.